another issue, we want to ask and put the control of budget on task as to why these pending bills in regards to employees is realized in county governments. So, Honorable Speaker, I want to support this motion and thank the Committee on County Public Investments and for Special Funds for bringing up this inquiry and this motion to the Senate. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Senator Majayo.
Asante Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, kwanza nataka kumpatia kongole aliyekuwa mwenyekiti wa kamati hii ambayo iliketi kuandika hii taarifa ama ripoti ya kutoweza kupeleka hizi pesa ambazo zinakatwa wafanyikazi katika
Order, honorable senators.
Katika zile pension funds ama mahali ambapo hizi pesa za watu walioweza kustaafu ama watastaafu baadaye huwa zinaweza kuegezwa. Bwana Spika, kitu cha kwanza, ukosefu wa kulipa haya mapato ya uzeeni, yani pension fund, watu wanapofanya kazi katika miaka yao waliofanya na hatimaye kuweza kuweka kitita cha pesa ambacho walikuwa wanakatwa kila mwezi, ni makosa ama ni ukiukaji wa sheria. Bwana Spika, tumeona ya kwamba wafanyikazi wengi wanaofanya kazi katika serikali ama wanaofanya kazi katika county governments, tumeona wengi wao wamekuwa wakikatwa katika hizi kampuni mbili, either lap trust ama lap fund. Malipo haya Bwana Spika yana mipangilio yao. Watu wanapofanya kazi ni kwamba wakati akiwa ameretire anaweza kuchukua pesa zake na zikaweza kumsaidia. Bwana Spika, tunaona ya kwamba hivi sasa.
Honorable senators, may the minority leader be heard in silence, please.
Kwa hivi sasa tunaona ya kwamba wale wanaokwenda katika retirement, hizi pesa ambazo zinatakana ziwasaidie, ambazo zinakatwa kutoka kwa mishahara yao wakati wakiwa na nguvu, wakati wakiwa bado ni vijana, wanafanya kazi kwa bidii na kuweza kuweka hizi pesa zao mwishowe wakiwa katika ile miaka ambayo inaelekea mwisho, inaonekana ya kwamba hizi pesa hawawezi kuzifikia. Imeleta hasara kubwa katika familia nyingi katika Kenya. Katika Kenya tunaona kuna familia ambazo wazee ambao wamesomesha watoto wao, hawa watoto sasa wamekuwa watu wazima, wanatakana waende university, wanatakana waende maskuli, wao wenyewe wanatakana kujikimu, kujinunulia dawa ama katika uzee wao kuweza kuishi maisha mazuri. Tunaona ya kwamba sasa wanafanya kazi na hizi pesa imekuwa kama ni wizi. Wizi kwa sababu sasa ikiwa mimi pesa zangu niliziweka katika shirika fulani, kama ni lap trust ama ni lap fund, na county yangu ile nilifanyia kazi atakana iwe pesa zangu waliziweka sawa sawa na wakazituma kule, hawakuzituma, wale hawawezi kunipatia hizo pesa. Sasa imekuwa mimi siko kule kwa pension fund, wala pia vile siko katika kazi. Bwana Spika, tunaona ya kwamba wafanyikazi wengi wanapata tabu na wengi wanakufa mapema kwa sababu pesa zao hawawezi kuzifikia, na hali wanakufa na dhiki ya kwamba pesa zao ziko na hawawezi kuzifikia na mtu amekuwa mgonjwa. Bwana Spika, hili tunaona ni kosa kubwa sana na hatua lazima hivi sasa hii ripoti ikamilishwe kulingana na vile ambavyo wamerecommend. Nafikiria ingekuwa jambo zuri sisi tukifuata zile recommendations zote ambazo hii kamati ambayo ndugu yangu Sotsi amekuwa kama mwenyekiti na wameandika hii wakisema ya kwamba hii ndio taratibu ya njia tunaweza kufanya kuifuata na kuona ya kwamba wale waliokuwa wakifanya kazi na hivi sasa wako nyumbani kuweza kutumia hayo hizo savings zao ama hizo pesa waliziweka wakati wakiwa wazee. Bwana Spika, cha umuhimu ni kwamba wale ambao hivi sasa wako katika majukumu haya, na hususan wale magavana ambao hivi sasa wako kwenye viti, ni umuhimu ya kuona ya kwamba hizi pesa ambazo ziko hivi sasa ni pesa kama bilioni 80. Bilioni 80 si pesa kidogo, Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, bilioni 80, na ukiangalia ni watu wangapi hivi sasa ambao wamestaafu wako katika Kenya nzima, wametapakaa katika Kenya nzima, na hivyo wanaishi katika maisha ya uchochole, ni kwamba hizi pesa bilioni 80 hazijapelekwa katika account zao ili waweze kuzifikia na ziweze kuwasaidia. Wengi wao wakiwa hivi sasa wamekuwa katika siku zao za mwisho, hatuwezi kusema siku zao za mwisho kuishi katika ulimwengu, lakini wamekaribia upande ule wa mwisho. Ni kwamba ingekuwa vyema kuona kwamba hatua mwafaka imechukuliwa na wameweza kurecommend ni hatua gani ichukuliwe ili kuona ya kwamba wamepata hizo pesa zao. Sisi tunaona kama bunge la Senate ingekuwa muhimu ikiwa hatua hiyo ichukuliwe mara moja ili serikali za county ziweze kupeleka hizi pesa. Asante Bwana Speaker.
Senator Bone.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is a very serious national problem. I remember the case in Marinya of Mzee Mudi Magoi from Bukusi village. Mr. Speaker, this is a man who never missed a weekend coming to my home to remind me about his pension. He's a guy who had spent all his productive years working for Kenya Railways, and his pension never came to him. Mr. Speaker, that was under the case of the defunct local authorities, which, according to the statistics from NSSF, the defunct local authorities, they owe NSSF 1.8 billion shillings. And the current devolved governments, they owe NSSF 2.7 billion shillings. Mr. Speaker, on the word of the Kenya Union of County Governments officials, they are owed from unremitted amounts a whooping 41.2 billion shillings. Mr. Speaker, these are people who are in their 70s. They are helpless. Even if they were to stand in a village barasa, nobody wants to listen to them. So they need this Senate for the Senate to advance their case, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, so that we don't miss it, it is very unfortunate that the cash transfer to the aged members of the society is working. And some of those people never did anything in terms of formal employment for the country. But the people who actually did formal employment and made their own contribution, governors are today enjoying that money, making trips to go to I don't know where, to go to South Africa, to buy flashy vehicles, and all manner of the wrong things, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we must stamp our foot down. A paper has just been circulated by the distinguished senator from Murang'a to Kiambu, that we request a small shift in the standing order so that governors can face the authority of this whole house. I was not for it, but when I reflect on it, I think it would be nice for some of these funny governors who became governors by accident. Governors must never be elected outside the political elite. It's only people who choose to go into politics that have something for the people. But when you get some professional in Nairobi, I don't know, a manager of ABCD, he then becomes a governor, he doesn't have the feel of the people. It is only politicians, Mr. Speaker, who feel it when they see a child being sent home for 20 shillings. Politicians understand. But a blue chip manager who has been in Nairobi the rest of his life, then ends up as a governor in Migori, has no idea that those realities do take place on the ground. Mr. Speaker, if we expedite this, simple payments like the money due for NHIF will be paid for these people. And NHIF, if you have never had a patient of cancer, ask me. My wife passed on because of cancer, and it can be extremely expensive. So expensive that that NHIF card used to mean more to me than the money I would get from elsewhere, because I would take it to Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital, and quickly my wife's bill is sorted out. Because we were spending 300,000 shillings per week. So, Mr. Speaker, we must stand behind these good people of ours and insist. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I support. I was still having one point, but...
Senator Eddy, catch.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I actually had the opportunity to go through this entire process by the virtue that I'm a member of this committee. Mr. Speaker, may you... The majority seems to be...
Majority Leader, why are you lecturing your colleagues? Have a seat, please, and be orderly. Proceed, Senator Eddy.
Mr. Speaker, the majority is exceptionally happy today. I don't know what is going on. Perhaps he can share with us the source of his happiness in the House today. Or maybe his pension has come somewhere. But, Mr. Speaker, the issue of pension, Mr. Speaker, I think this report is very, very direct. And I think that what I wanted to address myself to, Mr. Speaker, is the element of accumulation of this menace. Because, Mr. Speaker, if you read this report, by 2013, when we had the defunct local authorities, Mr. Speaker, the accumulation at that time was about 9 billion. I think that it was spread in a fraction of 5 billion for LAPSET, and I think NSIF had about 1 billion, and then the rest add the others. But then, between 2013 and the time that we were scrutinizing this particular problem, Mr. Speaker, we had reached 85 billion. That accumulation, Mr. Speaker, should worry this House in the sense that it seems that it's becoming something that governors are getting very comfortable with. So, to the extent that, because they think that there has been previous accumulations, therefore this cannot even be a first charge in their own account, so that governors are becoming notorious in terms of ensuring that these deductions are not remitted because somebody else will take the responsibilities, knowing very well that county governments go as a going concern. So, Mr. Speaker, I think that one of the most important recommendations that has been made by this committee, which is the recommendation of being able to form an inquiry body, a task force, to conduct a proper inquiry on this issue and put the matter to rest by the National Treasury and anybody who is relevant in what has been proposed as the composition of that task force, Mr. Speaker, is something that this House must give a lot of weight. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I would go as far as propose that this House should stand with that recommendation as the sole recommendation that we must be able to effect immediately, so that in the next 30 days after adoption of this report, Mr. Speaker, that task force can be formed. And this House, Mr. Speaker, perhaps should even go further and require of the National Treasury that after the formation of that task force, give the task force 60 days, so that in 90 days we can be able to put this matter to rest, Mr. Speaker. Because it cannot be taken as normal that people are retiring from county governments, and, Mr. Speaker, they go to their deathbed never seeing the money for their pension, never seeing the money for NSSF, and never seeing any money that they indeed contributed. In fact, alongside what Senator Boni has just talked about, where he has talked about what Senator Thangwa has proposed, that we should have the governors come to this house, Mr. Speaker, instead of the committees, although I don't agree with it, but for me the twist would be, can we move this process so fast so that some of the governors who have not been remitting these monies in this current regime, we can deal with them for once and for all. So they can we can hold them to account as an issue of current affairs, so that it is not only dealing with issues that have been stale and people who are previous governors. Let us make sure that we rush this process in a way that the cabinet secretary and the tax force can give us that report in 90 days, and then we want to see some of these governors summoned to this house. For this particular one, Senator Boni, I do agree that for this particular problem, we must summon those governors here and then hold them to account on current affairs and current matters that they can take responsibility for. I know that Nairobi is notorious, for instance, that in this money that we're looking for, 85 billion, majority of it is Nairobi. And the governor of Nairobi is there, and a very vibrant senator for Nairobi, Senator Sifuna, is here. We can...
Senator Crystal Asige. Proceed, Senator.
Thank you very much, Speaker. First, I want to congratulate the couple of counties that have been able to make payments to retirees as indicated in this report. I start my contribution. Mr. Speaker, it's indeed perplexing that despite several constitutional safeguards set out in Article 40 of our Constitution, hardworking Kenyans who have dedicated their lives to service and contributing to society find themselves at the mercy of poor management practices by county governments and other parastatals as a whole. Specifically, when it comes to the utilization and allocation of funds earmarked for remittance to pension schemes, which for decades seem to disappear, Speaker. The consequence of non-remittance is serious for retirees entering their golden years. They're left unsure about their finances, which is truly abysmal. Most of them end up depending on their families for daily sustenance, including health costs, utilities, transport, food, even airtime, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, children are not a retirement plan. Mr. Speaker, something that we've never discussed in this House is a phenomenon called black tax, which is money that is expected from us to take care of our elderly family members without question or excuse. Black tax does not care how much you earn, where you work, or your personal monetary responsibilities. It just forces young people to inherit the burden that counties and other parastatals that default in making these payments, as reflected in this report, should be making. This means, Mr. Speaker, that our money is not our money at all. On top of the high cost of living, high inflation, housing levy currently under debate, the new SHIF, increased NSSF, we are then forced to add black tax to this long list as a result of historical failures of counties to do their job. If the report's claim on page 26 holds true, with counties owing about 80 billion, efficient, transparent, and proper systems should ensure some kind of relief for our retirees and for them to at least live a dignified life once they're in retirement stages. It's the exact reason why, Speaker, Many Kenyans believe that having more children ensures a greater financial security for the family in old age. For instance, many are deceived into thinking that if they have 12 children, that means that they have access to 12 bank accounts that they can withdraw from without question or excuse later in life. And though we're happy to support our elderly family members because of the sweat that they put into raising us, I still wish to reiterate that children should not be a retirement plan. Counties must execute their mandate. Regrettably, Speaker, this issue extends beyond our county governments, as evidenced by the shortfall in the remittances by parastatals, amounting to about 22 billion Kenya shillings last year alone. This pervasive culture of diverting funds intended for pensions must be addressed urgently. Institutions must adopt a culture of responsible budgeting and timely payment to honor their commitments for these outstanding liabilities. Mr. Speaker, it's disheartening to learn that the Council of Governors chose not to honor the invitations to these crucial meetings as well, which directly affect the areas they govern. And they're the ones in the best position to find solutions, and they didn't show up. That does speak volumes, and retirees should know that this is stated clearly in the report, that our governors did not seem or think that it was important to show up. Mr. Speaker, it may be prudent to explore other avenues to address this. In this regard, involving KRA in the collection of this process, as outlined in Section 53B of the Retirement Benefits Act, could prove beneficial. That, Mr. Speaker, brings me to the end of my submission. I thank you.
Senator Mungatana.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to also put my thoughts in this debate. Mr. Speaker, retirement is a very challenging part of life. Mr. Speaker, this is the time that your body is reminding you that you are no longer what you used to be. Mr. Speaker, it's a time also that you have a lot of medical bills. Your power is not like you used to be. You can't chase after your business the way you used to be. You are not able to access offices the way you used to do. Mr. Speaker, it's a time when also sickness and disease is part and parcel of management of your life. And sometimes, Mr. Speaker, it's a time when you are managing your lifestyle diseases. So, Mr. Speaker, imagine a situation such as that, and then saddled with that, you have the challenge of not having steady liquid cash. You may have accumulated some land, you may have accumulated some shares somewhere, but, Mr. Speaker, the biggest challenge of retirement is that you are not able to access cash on a regular basis like you used to when you are in employment or in business. Mr. Speaker, it is a time when also private insurance companies, they don't want to take you for medical because you are a high risk. You are a person who is forever engaged in hospitals and so on. So you find even your premiums for those that will accept you, you will be paying a higher amount. In other words, Mr. Speaker, it is a time when you actually require a lot of cash flow, which is not available as easily as it used to be. Mr. Speaker, therefore, it is sad that governors who are in power right now and those before, they forget that one day, one time, they will leave office. One day, one time, they will grow to be 70. One day, one time, they will be 80 years old, and they will face the same situations that their employees whom they have been mistreating are currently facing. Mr. Speaker, it is a very sad time when you look at governors moving in their nice vehicles. Some of them, Mr. Speaker, they will not switch off the vehicle because it is hot. So they want to give the speech and they wait, their cars are moving and circulating air condition. You know, Mr. Speaker, this is something we see in the governor of Tana River County. You know, you leave your fuel, your car moving so that it is cooled down as you are giving your speech for 1 hour, 1.5 hours. And then when you come back, Mr. Speaker, it is cool, so you sit there. Mr. Speaker, it's really a shame that the same governors, they then fail to pay remittances for the retiree. Mr. Speaker, we are taking this opportunity as senators to tell them one day, one time, Mr. Speaker, they will leave those offices. One day, one time, they will grow old. One day, one time, they will be 70, they will be 80, and they will need to have access to retirement. So, Mr. Speaker, we are saying, can those governors have a heart, Mr. Speaker? Can those governors pay the people? Because it is a shame when you see an old man who used to be a person with high position in the county, Mr. Speaker, in the county council, coming to ask for very small amounts of money just to survive from you, Mr. Speaker. It is a very sad situation. Mr. Speaker, sometimes these people even politicize it. When people have left office, if they were not supporting you, and you are seeking re-election, and they didn't support you, they make it a point not to pay your final emoluments, Mr. Speaker. This has happened to a number of people that we know, Mr. Speaker. And so we are saying that the report has made a recommendation that there will be a fast charge on those unremitted amounts and the debts. And this report, Mr. Speaker, should be implemented. I don't very much agree with this idea that we should form another task force for this thing. There are some recommendations like making it a fast charge on and making the KRA a collector of this debt. This can be done immediately. We don't need a task force, a multi-agency to carry.
Senator Faki.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunipa fursa hii kuchangia ripoti ya kamati ya Senate inahusiana na masuala ya uwekezaji na hazina maalum. Mheshimiwa Spika, kwanza naunga mkono ripoti hii. Na ni masikitiko kwamba kaunti zetu zinadaiwa bilioni 80 takriban, ambazo pesa hizi ni pesa za wale ambao wamestaafu, ambao kwa sasa hawana mapato ya kila mwezi. Mheshimiwa Spika, kaunti yangu ya Mombasa naona yadaiwa bilioni 9 na milioni 420 na 30. Mheshimiwa Spika, swala hili laathiri kila mtu, Mheshimiwa Spika, hata wale ambao wako kazini kwa sasa. Uwezo wao wa kufanya kazi umeathirika kwa sababu hajui akistaafu atapata malipo yake mapema ama hatapata. Mheshimiwa Spika, niliwahi kufanya mkutano na ile bodi ya Mombasa ya County Public Service Board pamoja na county ya Mombasa, ambapo tulipendekeza kuwa wale ambao wanajulikana watastaafu karibuni, pesa zao zote zipelekwe kwa haraka ili wanapostaafu wawe hawana manumbukizi ya pesa kuja kudai. Wakimaliza wawe wameweza kupewa pesa zao zote na waondoke kwa usalama. Lakini Mheshimiwa Spika, swala hilo mpaka sasa halijaweza kutekelezwa. Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa hivyo tumeona pia Mombasa iliweza kupoteza estate ya Changamwe New Estate kwa sababu walishindwa kulipa pesa za pension, na wakafanyana hesabu na Lab Trust wakachukua hiyo estate, na sasa sisi kama watu wa Mombasa na kaunti ya Mombasa imepoteza rasilimali kubwa kwa sababu ya kukataa kulipa pension. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, haya mapendekezo ni sawa kabisa kutekelezwa, lakini kama alivyosema Seneta Mungatana kwamba kuundwa kwa kamati nyingine itakuwa ni kuzunguka mbuyu bila ya kuwa na mwelekeo wote, kwa sababu hawa wote ambao wametajwa katika hii waziri wa fedha, mkuu wa sheria, wote hawa pia wako katika masuala ya IBEC, ambapo wanajua kuwa pesa za pension hazipeleki katika yale mashirika ya pension ambayo yamewekwa na serikali kusimamia pension hizo. Kwa hivyo itakuwa tuendelea kupigia mbuzi gitaa wakati hakuna mwelekeo wote ambao unapatikana. Kwa hivyo napendekeza Mheshimiwa Spika kwamba tukubaliane na ripoti hii, lakini swala la kuundwa kwa kamati nyingine, hiyo itakuwa inapoteza muda na vile vile pia itakuwa inapoteza rasilimali muhimu ambazo zingetumika kuangalia masuala mengine ambayo yako. Mheshimiwa Spika. Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa kubalizia ni kuwa swala la pension kwa vile ni muhimu, na hata japokuwa wanatakikana walipe riba kwa zile pesa ambazo hawakuzipeleka kwa wakati, Mheshimiwa Spika, hiyo riba pia haiwashtui. Kwa hivyo itakuwa bora Mheshimiwa Spika kwamba wale magavana wahusika wawe personally liable, wafanye kuwa kama kuna gharama yote atakana kulipwa kwa sababu wamechelewesha kulipa pesa, basi gharama ile iende kwa binafsi kwa gavana yule, kuliko kuwa inaongezeka interest kila siku. Wakiwa tumeshindwa kulipa ile kiwango cha chini, tutawezaje kulipa kikiwa na riba juu yake? Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunipa fursa hii.
Senator Kisang.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise to support the report by the Civic Committee. Honorable Speaker, this is a disease that has been there since those days of the county and municipal councils, Honorable Speaker. As Senator Eddie said, by the close of 2012, the different county councils owed the pension schemes over 9 billion. And from 2013 up to now, Honorable Speaker, it has risen from 9 billion to close to about 81, 82 billion. So it means basically the current governors, the governors from 2013 up to now have not been remitting pension deductions. And these pension deductions, Honorable Speaker, it is not that the money has been paid. This is money contributed by the employees. 7.5%. So we've seen, Honorable Speaker, the governors are doing, they over budget resources from A&A, their own resource. And then at the end of the financial year, Honorable Speaker, if they don't meet the target, they divert deductions from employees and pay for development they will have done and pay the chronics, Honorable Speaker, at the expense of the employees. There are so many employees who have retired, Honorable Speaker. Some have passed on, have died because of not having the pensions to sustain them in life. This is something people contribute so that in the sunset years, Honorable Speaker, they use the money to buy medicine, they use the money to live good life, but the governors and those mayors those days and the clerks, Honorable Speaker, misused this money and diverted to do other things, Honorable Speaker. And that's why we are saying we ask our members in this House to support this report and we pass it so that the resolutions can be implemented, Honorable Speaker. If you check LAF Fund, LAF Trust, CPF, NSSF, Honorable Speaker, they are owed a lot of money by the county governments. In fact, out of 47 county governments, Honorable Speaker, it's only 3 of them who are up to date, and we need to laud them. One of them includes Nyeri County Government. They are paid up to date, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, we are saying that we may need to amend this, the Pension RBA Act, Honorable Speaker, so that RBA can empower KRA to deduct, to be a collector of the pension deductions from county governments. And if they don't deduct, we wish that the control of budget deduct at source so that our people don't continue to suffer, Honorable Speaker, because of just rogue governors, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, KRA, we know they have been very efficient in terms of collection of taxes. And if they are taken as an agent by the county governments, Honorable Speaker, we believe the pension deductions will be collected and our people are not going to suffer, Honorable Speaker. I think as a committee, we are proposed to bring amendments to the RBA Act and also KRA Act, Honorable Speaker, so that this can be done, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, we also need Treasury to be tough. And so that, you know, they reign on these governors who are not remitting these deductions, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, as it's been mentioned, Nairobi County government is one of the major culprits you know, they are close to about 20 billion. If Nairobi alone could pay, then basically those deductions will be reduced. In fact, we are proposing, Honorable Speaker, that it becomes mandatory that the control of budget does not release any funds.
Senator Kavindu.
Asante Bwana Spika kwa kunipa hii fursa ili niweze kuunga mkono huu mswada wa kamati inaoongozwa na Bwana Ososi, seneta, wa uhamishaji wa pensheni. Bwana Spika, nataka kuunga mkono nikisema ya kwamba hata ni aibu na haistahili na haifai kuwa magavana wanaweza kuwa wanakata watu pesa zao za pensheni alafu wanakosa kuzipeleka pahali zinastahili ili wakati wa kustaafu waweze kuzipata. Mtu ufanya kazi Bwana Spika ili wakati wa uzeeni aweze kupata kitu cha kujisaidia nacho, na wanapokatwa hizi hela Bwana Spika ni kwamba wana matumaini makubwa ya kwamba maisha ya uzeeni watakuwa sawa na watakuwa salama. Na Bwana Spika, nataka kusema hata sio hao watu tu peke yao wanaofanya kazi katika makaunti peke yao, mbali hata walimu, maana ninakaa kwa hiyo kamiti ya elimu, na ninajua ya kwamba kuna walimu kutoka mwaka wa 2012 bado hawajapata pesa zao za pensheni. Na Bwana Spika, inaumiza kwa sababu hata wengi wanakufa bila kupata hela zao. Bwana Spika, ni lazima hii kamiti ione inaweza kuchukua hatua gani zaidi ya kuweza kumake sure, ama hii Senate ya kuweza kuhakikisha kwamba hizi pesa zimekuwa zimepatikana zote na zote zimehamishwa kwenye fund hiyo ya pensheni, ili hao watu wakaweze kufurahia pensheni yao na pesa zao kama watu wale wengine, kwa maana hata wakati wanapotoka wanapoenda retire, Bwana Spika, wanapata shida nyingi sana kwa sababu hata wakati huo hawana vyeti vya kuweza kuwaruhusu kwenda hospitalini na kutibiwa na hizo cheti za insurance. Na wakati huu ndio huwa mgumu zaidi, kwa maana wengi ndio huwa wanaugua magonjwa kama ya pressure, magonjwa kama ya sukari, na kwa hivyo wanakuwa na shida hata zaidi. Bwana Spika, ninaunga mkono na ninasema hatua ichukuliwe kwa magavana na kwa watu wote, hata wizara zile zingine ambao huwa hawapeleki hizi pesa za pensheni pahali kwenye ile fund ambayo inastahili. Asante Bwana Spika, nina support.
Senator Abbas.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Also, I want to join my colleagues to support the report. Honorable Speaker, in this country, I think the most people who have been neglected so much are the retirees of this country. We are only talking about the counties. Those who are also working with the national government equally suffer the same problems. It's actually very painful. Having served their prime age, this country with education, and when you retire at the age of 60 or 65, you move around and struggle to get your pension. Honorable Speaker, what happened is actually in these counties, the money for social reductions are being used as miscellaneous funds. When salaries delay, they pay against salary. When they have any other issues or commitments, they use the same money. And as a result, the same money again accrues interest, because the institutions that the social deductions go to, the LAB fund, KRA, pensioners, all these, the money accrues actually interest. Actually, as we talk, my county is actually paying now almost 1 billion shillings for the social reductions. And as a result, the most unfortunate thing was the governor was there the second-term governor. 2017-22, today he's still looking for his gratitude because he failed to submit that money. It's a very unfortunate situation. As a result, today the same governor is looking for the same money, but he failed to do it when it was to submit that money when it was supposed to be submitted. Honourable Speaker, I think this is what the best thing to do. We need to change the institutional, framework for the pensioners. We need to decentralize because, you know, what happens is these pensioners, they come all the way from the far-fetched areas of the country. They struggle. We compel that every county must submit the money in time. And if they fail to do it, then the pensioners, they are not even giving pension. Giving interest. They cannot even get their own money. So one of the things is actually trustees. And the pensioners, they are not even giving pension. Giving interest. They cannot even get their own money. So one of the things is actually trustees that hold this money at times. They hold money for, so they're saying, oh, the children must reach at the age of 18. So if you say the child must reach at 18 years old and he cannot even go to school, I think it meets, it meets the purpose of paying that pension. So I think that act has also to be reviewed. One other thing, Honourable Speaker, that it is actually this time, the hard times, because of these guys get pressure. They get all kinds of diseases. They cannot access treatment. Fair. We need to act as a house to be able to help the retirees in this country. With those few remarks, I beg to support.
Senator Muma.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to contribute to this report by CIPIC, which I would like to commend them for the report and for meeting with all the stakeholders on matters retirement. Mr. Speaker, I think the issues of the older people, older citizens in the country are not well appreciated and are not well provided for in policy. So everybody who deals with matters relating to persons who are older generation, persons who've retired, seems to deal with them casually. And this is not just a problem of the county governments, but it's also a problem at the national government. Mr. Speaker, we need, in the first instance, to encourage the ministry concerned, which I think is the ministry in charge of labor, to come up with a clear policy on how to take care of the older generation or older people, including those who have retired. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of protecting the retirement benefits of workers, both at national and county level, we need to come up, in the first instance, the Senate, in my view, needs to ensure that currently, the current remittances of pension funds belonging to workers are done in accordance with the law. So that even as we're dealing with the backlog, we ensure that currently, because salaries are budgeted for in full, whatever is supposed to be remitted to the pension funds is actually remitted. So that we are worrying about backlogs from now back in the past and not creating more backlog from where we are. I have not seen that clearly stipulated there, even as they are suggesting a task force. I think we need to do the first things first. Every county needs to actually remit the current deductions as they're supposed to. Mr. Speaker, we also need, I was hoping the committee would come up with a penalty that would make some of these officers, the finance officers, possibly accounting officers at the county level, to actually be penalized personally for failing to ensure statutory deductions that they are supposed to do. Mr. Speaker, I think the rights of these people, and we don't have a union of persons who are retired, maybe that's why we find it easy to actually violate their rights, knowing that they may not have the capability to come together and go to court to claim their rights. So we willy-nilly deal with their monies as though it is small change that should be dealt with in the manner that it should be dealt with. Mr. Speaker, I request that the issue of the task force be fast-tracked if it must be there. But Mr. Chair, to speak, I think you have the recommendations, and what we needed is actually for those recommendations to be immediately moved and somebody to come up with stringent penalties against officers, accounting officers at the county level and even at the national level, to ensure that what they are supposed to do is actually done. Mr. Speaker, as we move on, as I have mentioned, the policies around the older people are vague and clear, but all of us are going to be old one day, and it is important that we contribute to coming up with policies and laws that will be able to secure not just the retirees, but other older people, and to ensure that funds that they have invested, whether for health, whether for pensions, are properly utilized. And those who do not secure these funds are actually penalized for misappropriation and also for failure to remit them. I support, Mr. Chair.
Senator Murango.
Asante sana mstahiki Spika kwa kunipa hii nafasi kuchangia kuhusu shinda ambazo zinawakabidhi wale watu ambao wamestaafu kupata pesa zao za uzeeni. Mstahiki Spika, Kirinyaga ni moja hapo ambapo kuna watu kama hawa. Mimi binafsi nimehusika na kuhuzunika nikizika babangu mdogo kule Kirinyaga kwa sababu ya kansa, na alikufa akiwa na hakulipo pesa yake toka mwaka 2012 kuendelea mbele mpaka mahali alikufia. Mstahiki Spika, alikuwa anafanya kazi katika hospitali ya rufaa ya Kirinyaga, na ni mmoja wapo tu wa wengi ambao wamenifikia wakilalamika kutolipwa pesa yao ya uzeeni. Mstahiki Spika, harambe nyingi ambazo zinafanyika siku ya leo ni kwa sababu ya watu ambao hawajalipwa pesa zao za uzeeni na walijitolea muhanga katika kupeana huduma katika serikali nyingi za kaunti. Ni jambo la kuhuzunisha kwamba hata tunapoongea siku ya leo hawapewi kipaumbele kuhakikisha kwamba wamelipwa pesa zao. Wengi wa wale ambao wanateseka sahi ni umri ambao umesonga, na jinsi umri unavyosonga mtu ndo anaandamwa na mashinda nyingi, magonjwa mingi, na hawezi kujifanyia kazi kwa sababu pia udhaifu na kukosa nguvu inaandamana na uzee unapofikia mtu. Kwa hivyo mstahiki Spika, nimeona ya kwamba Kirinyaga pia walikuwa meketi na CPF na wakakubaliana kwamba ataanza kulipa pesa zao za uzeeni, lakini mkataba haujatiwa saini hata siku ya leo ili kuwezesha wale watu kupata pesa zao. Kwa ile bidii ambayo ilifanywa Kirinyaga nashukuru, lakini pia naomba kwamba waendelee na kaunti zote kuipatia kipaumbele mipango ya kulipa pesa ya wale watu ambao wamefanya kazi katika kaunti zetu, kwa sababu ule mzigo ambao wale wazee wanaupata tunaukabidhi sisi kama viongozi na pia watoto wa wale watu ambao tulikuwa tunajivunia hapo awali kwamba anafanya kazi katika gatuzi zetu za Kenya. Kwa hivyo mstahiki Spika, ningetaka kushukuru kamati ambayo inaongozwa na Senator Osotsi kwa kazi nzuri ambao walifanya, kazi ngumu ambao wamefanya, na kuweka nakala na stakabadhi ambazo tunazitegemea siku ya leo kuchangia katika mswada na masaa mengi ya kazi ambao wamefanya. Na niseme ya kwamba wazee wanafurahi. Wengi hata nikiwa hapa naona wakiandika ujumbe ya kwamba wamefurahi na kazi ambayo inafanywa na Seneti, haswa kuhakikisha kwamba wamepata haki yao kama wazee ambao walitolea jasho, na Waswahili wanasema mgala muue na haki yake mpe. Kwa hivyo haki ya wale waliostaafu wanafaa kuwafikia wale watu ambao wamestaafu. Asante sana Mr. Speaker.
Senator Beth Siengo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this chance also to add my voice into this report. I want to appreciate, first of all, the CPIC committee for the good work that they have done and collecting the inputs from the affected people and the Kenyans at large. Mr. Speaker, allow me to say it is very inhuman for the governors and any institution not to pay workers their pension. It causes a lot of pain when people have invested time and resources into working and serving an institution, and when they leave, they don't get their benefits. Many of them, of course, leave employment when they are tired, and when they are tired, and they retire when they are tired. They need to get their benefits. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, some of them may not even had time to have families when they were working. And when they retire is when they maybe get the young wives to take care of them. And then when they are not paid their benefits, Mr. Speaker, they suffer because they want to treat these young women they have brought into their lives and give them the best life they can afford. And when they are not paid, then they get frustrated. Mr. Speaker, it is important to note that when retirees are at home, they are also contributing in building the nation. And they need to get their benefits so that when they are called in those social gatherings, in the family meetings, they can also contribute when they are at ease because they have their benefits, they have their money, and that helps them to keep their social status so that they don't feel as if they are neglected and as if they are social misfits, as if they are not accepted because they cannot contribute or maybe participate in what the community is doing. Mr. Speaker, it is very important that as a House we come up with clear way forward of how to enforce payment of pensions of those who have served the nation and they go home and they require to be supported. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity again to recognize that those who have been unpaid or those who don't get their benefits, they really go through psychological torture. They need to be helped by getting their benefits, and their pension should be paid in good time, not to wait for so long. So many die even without enjoying the fruits of their hard work. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving this opportunity.
Senator Sigei Wakili.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to also add my voice to the report that we received yesterday from the committee. Mr. Speaker, it took the chairperson of the committee, the Honorable Senator Sotsi, over 45 minutes to present this document. And what he did was to lay the foundation of why we are where we are and the suffering that the people who are supposed beneficiaries of the remittances have gone through. Mr. Speaker, in all that recommendation the committee made, it is one of those things that we as a House can help the people who have retired and their entitlements being retained by the various county governments and institutions that are supposed to remit these dues for the benefit of those people at their old age. Mr. Speaker, the figures which we were given, I'm trying to trace the specific paragraph, is something that we cannot take for granted because, Mr. Speaker, at paragraph 63, where there is an additional note on the amounts that is due to the various institutions, starting from LAP Trust, NSSF, LAP Fund. These are remittances which have not been released by these institutions for the benefit of those people. And Mr. Speaker, we are aware that upon retirement, an individual has got no other source of income, especially at their age, and the affinity of such individuals also to have medical conditions that requires constant attention is rampant. In the event that they are unable to get any source of resources, yet they had contributed, they are the ones who would, in most cases, be subjected to conditions which are not, Mr. Speaker, supposed to, because of inaction on the part of the institutions. Among the several recommendations which I want to commend the committee is the recommendation that requires a fast charge on the remittances that goes to the county governments. This is a recommendation at page 28, where once the county government is remitted its allocation, the fast charge must be laid out on these statutory deductions. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, the proposed amendment which they made with regards to the amendment on the Public Finance Management Act, where this will ensure that such county governments indeed confirm before any other payment is made, these remittances are done, will be the only way to enforce the proposals which the committee is making. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, the control of budget, where there is a monthly payroll payment request by the county governments. If we were able to ensure that the controller of budget, prior to approval of any such withdrawals, these statutory dues are made and are paid out, is going to help us to monitor the payments. How will this be done? If we already have in law a fast charge on any remittances, and prior to any approval of any deductions, or rather any payment is made, then the only way these monies can get into where they're supposed to is through the Office of the Control of Budget. As to whether or not the role that Kenya Revenue Authority can be given to enhance these remittances being made, I believe the committee must have also considered the fact that these unremitted contributions become part of the role of the Kenya Revenue Authority, Retirement Benefits Act, as well as also the fact that if KRA was to be involved in these deductions, it means that the collections will be automatic to the extent that the deductions by any county government that has not been made is made to be a role of the Kenya Revenue Authority. I allowed the comments which were made with regards to a number of county governments that have entered into agreements with the funds for purposes of remittances. The most unfortunate thing is these agreements, though they have been signed, if they have not been honored, it will remain just agreements. What is the effect? The committee, of course, had the feeling that additional interest and penalties will accrue for as long as such payments are not made. And I believe that with the recommendation that this House can make by adopting this report, we will be able to support, we will be able to help a good number of our contributors who have suffered over time because of these unremitted deductions. Mr. Speaker, I support and I recommend the committee on these non-remittances of pension deductions to the schemes by various county entities, because this is one of those reports that will enhance the oversight role of this House if we were able to ensure that members who contribute benefit from their contributions while they are still alive and not to be remitted to their estates after they are no more in this world. Mr. Speaker, I support and I congratulate the committee for a job well done. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Mundigi.
Thank you Bwana Speaker kwa kunipa ruhusa niweze kuchangia mjadala wa Senator Osoti juu ya pesa ya uzeeni na pesa ya National Hospital Insurance Fund na pesa zingine kama ni sambengi, kwa sababu niko na huzuni sana kwa sababu ya county zile ziliwaswa na madeni na wale governor walikuwako, kwa sababu wale watu tunatetea hapa sio upande wa county peke yake, ni pahali mingi hata walimu, lakini nikichangia upande wa wafanyikazi wa county wako na shida nyingi, kwa sababu tunakumbuka Bwana Speaker, wakati walianjiliwa walikuwa achanga, lakini wakati wameanjiliwa tunajua mfanyikazi wote ile pesa anapata inakuanga ni kidogo, na ukiangalia akianjiliwa huwa anaingia kwa mandeni ya benki na pia upande wa Rock, na zile pesa zingine inakatwa benki na pia mambo ya pesa hiyo ya uzeeni. Ni aibu kubwa sana, kwa sababu tunaona mtu akienda kustahafu amefikisha miaka 60, Bwana Speaker, anaendelea kuwa na shinda, na unajua huyu mtu isipokuwa ni hao watu wa county zetu haingesimama vizuri, na tumeona mambo ya kule vijijini wakati wa maombolezi ndio wanasimamia, wakati wa makanisa ndio wanasimamia. Kwa hivyo hao watu wameshikilia serikali na kona zote, na wakienda kulitaa wanakuanga na shida nyingi. Kwa hiyo niko na huzuni, hata kama naunga mkono kwa zile county ambacho kama Embu County unakuta wakati huu unakuta wamechagua governor ambaye ni mchapakazi, lakini alikuta kama ndeni ya contractors ni kama bilioni 2 na 200, na mambo ya benki akakuta milioni 500, na wakati amepata pesa anajaribu kulipa wenji bill kila mwezi analipa milioni 2 na 500, na upande naye Senate inamrashimisha mpaka alipe mandeni ya watu. Unakuta county nyingi siko na shinda kama county ya Embu. Kwa hivyo nasema kama kuna uwezo pia committee ingesema kama pending bill hizo, kama vitu kama hizo itafanywa namna gani ndio county zile siko na mandeni iweze kurudishwa kwa njia ile inafaa, ndio wafanyikazi wa county wawache kuumia. Kwa hivyo naunga mkono, lakini kuna njia mwafaka ingeangaliwa hawa mangavana, ndio hata hawa wasikue na sinda ya stress watasaidia namna gani, kwa sababu unakuta kama Embu County unakuta kuna sinda nyingi, na ndio hiyo sinda tunajaribu kutatua hapa. Kwa hiyo naunga mkono, lakini mpaka tuangalie njia ni gani hizo county zitaweza kupata pesa ambaye inaweza kulipa hiyo mandeni, ndio wafanyikazi wakienda kulitaya waweze kupata pesa zao kwa njia haraka, kwa sababu tumeona kampuni nyingi kama ile kampuni ilikuwa fanya Kengen, ukistahafu uwezi maliza miezi 2 kama unjapata pesa yako. Kwa hiyo ningeomba hata county government sile asina mandeni iweze kusaidia, kama miezi kama 5 mtu anja stahafu makaratasi yake itengenezwe vizuri, ndio tuweze kurekebisha vile watu tutaweza kujenga maisha yao wakati wameenda nyumbani, na kwa sababu tunajua wana pesa zingine njia tumeona watu wengi mtu akistahafu anaenda anakufa anagonjeka. Kwa hivyo mpaka tuangalie njia mwafaka ile tutasaidia watu wa county ile watakaa vizuri. Kwa hiyo Bwana Speaker, mimi naunga mkono.
Senator Mofire.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to support this very important motion. You know, non-failure to remit these dues, Honorable Speaker, borders on criminality. It is very painful that a county government under the governor cannot remit dues meant for their employees. You know, the purpose of saving, Honorable Speaker, is for tomorrow. It is very painful, Honorable Speaker, that somebody works for close to 20-30 years. By the time you are 60 years, you are sent home to go and retire, to go and rest. Then all of a sudden that we realize that you have no savings at all. And I'm happy that Honorable Sosi, through his committee, has brought this motion. And I thought this motion now should be developed into a bill, because sometimes motions are not compelling, they are just advisory. So that we can create some punitive measures through which we can punish these wrong governors who are not remitting dues for their people. It is very shameful, it is very painful, Honorable Speaker, because having worked in the counties for close to 10 years, almost a decade, I know the pains, I know the struggles, I know the frustrations that the county workers are going through. And these things revolves around corruption. It's pure theft, because at times this money is put into some funding accounts and it generates a lot of interest for the benefit of few errant individuals in those counties. So I think I would implore upon this committee, which is run by my brother Ososi, maybe to develop a bill through this motion, which is supposed to bring in some very punitive measures to make sure that we punish this house, make some regulations. Honorable Speaker, can you protect me from Honorable Karen and the STI? They are making disruptions. So I'm happy, Honorable Source, because you have come up with this issue. I think you must have done a lot of investigations, because there is a lot of cry across the board. All counties, actually, most of the counties, we have very few counties that are exceptional. Most counties are going through this mess, and I'm happy that this committee has brought this issue to this House, and I strongly support that we must make some serious regulations to make sure that the employees who are supposed to get their dues, who are supposed to have their pension remittance to relevant editors, are supposed to get their money once they retire, because that is the essence of saving. I support Honorable Speaker.
Senator Karungo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to also support this report. Mr. Speaker, I'm a member of the CP committee, the committee that prepared the report that was presented to the House by our chairman. Mr. Speaker, I think it should be an impeachable offense for any governor to deduct anybody's salary and never remit the same to the pension schemes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if I was to give you the figures of my county, Kiambu County government owes LAP Fund 59 million. It owes LAP Trust 167 million. It owes County Pension Fund 54.6 million, Mr. Speaker. In total, the county government of Kiambu is holding money for its workers that it has deducted from their salary, amounting to 280.6 million, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and that's why every day, every time, I'm saying on the floor of this House that we need to change the way we do things, Mr. Speaker. Because if we cannot hold governors into account, our people are suffering, and our people will continue suffering. Can you imagine working for a county for 10 years, or 20 or 30, then you go home without anything. And when you go to the governor to ask for your money, you're given a check to go and rear or put them in your house, Mr. Speaker, as you wait for your money. Yet, that money that is dishing out, Mr. Speaker, can be given to these pension schemes so that people can get their dues, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would want to thank the chairman and the members of this committee, CIPIC, because every governor of the 47 counties, they have appeared before this committee to discuss issues with pension, to discuss issues with water. And that's why I call upon you, Mr. Speaker, to also assist, because some of the committees, Mr. Speaker, we might rethink of reconstitution of such committees, Mr. Speaker, because they are not performing as per the expectation and the mandate that they were given, Mr. Speaker. And I'm going to mention, Mr. Speaker, the Committee on CPAC. Mr. Speaker, the Committee on CPAC is one of the committees that is making such things to happen in the counties, because they are not putting governors into account. Why am I saying so, Mr. Speaker? My governor was supposed to appear before the Committee of CPAC on Monday next week. But already he has written a request for an extension, the 7th extension, Mr. Speaker, 7th. He's asking to come in June of this year, Mr. Speaker. I'm not saying that the committee will give him that leeway, Mr. Speaker. But what I'm trying to say, we need your intervention. How can a committee give one governor 7 extensions? Because the governor probably is known to some members of that committee or the chair of that committee. And that's what I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, we should rethink of reconstituting such committees.
Can you abandon that line of contribution, please? You cannot impute improper motive on your colleagues. Kindly abandon that line of debate. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But I feel frustrated when I'm standing here as a senator of the great county of Kiambu, where I'm supposed to fight for my people. But when I'm trying to do my oversight role, Mr. Speaker, I feel there are some other, things that are happening around that are somehow jeopardizing that, Mr. Speaker. And that's why I'm moving, I'm trying to implore you, Mr. Speaker, to crack the whip on such committees, Mr. Speaker, that would really not give any governor an opportunity to be heard or any governor an opportunity to be questioned so that he can answer questions that are affecting his county, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I thank the committee of CPIC that every governor has appeared, those who did not appear, they were summoned. Those who did not honor the summons, they were fined. I'm also a chair on roads committee, Mr. Speaker. A governor who never appeared, we summoned, we fined them 500,000, they paid. I believe we need to check on how we are checking on the governors, Mr. Speaker. Nevertheless, I support this report.
Senator Wamatinga. Senator Okenyuri.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. I also want to support this report by the Watchdog Committee led by the Vihiga Senator Usosi. And Mr. Speaker, I want to actually start by saying I've actually been going through various surveys. One of the damning surveys I came across was by an international financial service provider that actually rated retirees in Kenya as one of the poorest globally. Mr. Speaker, in a country that is trying to encourage saving and also increase in contributions in terms of the Social Security Fund, this is something that we seriously need to think about, Mr. Speaker. Not just counties, Mr. Speaker. And I would say it's actually gross irresponsibility and unsound to deduct money from someone and then not remit to the pension fund organizations, Mr. Speaker. Because when you actually look at the tales of many retirees in this country, the moment you retire, go home, most of the issues you're dealing with is either burying your colleagues, paying school fees, and most of them are paying school fees for dependents who are young people between 20 and 25 years, Mr. Speaker. So when you actually carefully scrutinize that situation, most retirees are actually forced to come back to work, and they are coming back to work not in government, doing odd jobs to try and make more money because they have nothing that these county government are not giving the money that they were meant to be paid back for. Mr. Speaker, I would say at times it's deliberate because the county chiefs are prioritizing projects where they are making money from. That's why it's very easy for a county government to launch a new project, but diddy-dally in remitting money that is meant for people who have been working for them and loyal workers for that case, Mr. Speaker. And I think we need to really be very strict on this issue. I see among the observations this committee made was that there was an increase in the debt owed to pension schemes post-devolution, and the debts comprise majorly of accrued interest and penalties. I don't know, maybe we need to think about including this in the pending bills. And also, as county governments, this should be among the first charges in the budget. That would actually prevent the county chiefs from running away from such a crucial responsibility, Mr. Speaker. Additionally, I see the recommendation of forming a task force. While that's what seems realistic as now, but I think it would be dragging us back because most of these organizations have data internally of who is owed, how much is owed. Forming a task force is going to take a very long time, and some of these people, as my colleagues have said, would even die before they get their dues, Mr. Speaker. So a task force, as recommended here, wouldn't be the best option, Mr. Speaker. We know the route such task forces take in this country, and at times you'd end up not even getting the justice you deserve, Mr. Speaker. We can't advise retirees to go to court. Court processes are very expensive, time-consuming, and it's very unlikely that they are going to get justice from those areas. So, Mr. Speaker, as I've always said, this being a watchdog committee, I expect very radical recommendations. We shouldn't be massaging people who know what they are meant to be doing, and they continue doing that every now and then at the expense of ordinary people who have no space either to represent themselves in these houses or speak for themselves in the several functions we attend in the villages, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, while we want to encourage the culture of saving in Kenya, we also need to...
Senator Kibwana.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mine, I just want to support the report of the PIC committee where I sit. Mr. Speaker, in terms of pension, it is very sad. It is very sad how the issue is handled. Many people have died without receiving their dues. And it is unfortunate that even looking at Nairobi and Mombasa have the highest pension debt according to the data submitted. And unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, the dues, the interest actually charged by the LAP Fund and LAP Trust has really led to the growth of these penalties. So it is unfortunate that the counties have failed to settle due to that. And looking at Nyamira, Mr. Speaker, Nyamira and Nyeri County have actually settled their principal pension. So it is possible to settle these contributions in full. We need also to have strict penalties, Mr. Speaker, on this one, that the counties, I've seen the recommendation that the counties, the RBA should appoint the KRA to collect actually, for collecting, as collecting agents, to collect these dues. The counties have failed us, Mr. Speaker, on this issue, and seriously looking at the life that the governors are leading, and yet the poor people who have retired and expect their dues are not receiving anything. It is unfortunate. So I feel strongly that I do support the recommendation that the RBA should appoint the KRA as collecting agents if the counties have failed. Mr. Speaker, with this one, much has been said. I don't need to repeat, but I strongly support this report. Thank you.
Senator Joyce.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika. simama pia kuchangia mada ya siku ya leo ya kuwalipa wafanyikazi wetu pesa za uzeeni. Mheshimiwa Spika, hii ni changamoto kubwa sana kwa wafanyikazi wetu wanapomaliza kufanya kazi na kuweza kuitisha pesa zao za uzeeni na waikoze. Mheshimiwa Spika, ilali wamejikaza, wametumia muda wao kuifanyia kazi serikali, wamejikaza pia hata kujinyima ili waweze kuiegeza hiyo pesa na mwishowe waweze kuitumia katika wakati wa uzeeni. Mheshimiwa Spika, ningependa pia kusema ya kwamba hii ni changamoto ambayo makaunti zetu zinapitia ama serikali zetu za ukatuzi zinapitia, lakini ni changamoto pia inachangiwa na serikali kuu, kwa sababu kuna pesa ambaye ilikuwa inatakikana ilipwe katika serikali za ukatuzi ili waweze pia kuitumia kwa kuilipa hayo pesa. Na niposa ningependa kusema Mheshimiwa Spika ya kwamba ningependa kushukuru kamiti kwa sababu ya ile kazi nzuri ambayo wameifanya, na ningependa kusema ya kwamba kama hii nyumba itaweza kuitekeleza ile maneno ambayo ametupa ya kwamba tuweze kuitekeleza, Mheshimiwa Spika, najua wataweza kusaidika. Hata sitaki kusema mengi Mheshimiwa Spika, ningependa tu kusema ya kwamba na support hii report. Asante.
Senator Wamatinga.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving me this opportunity. I like also to support the report that has been done by the team led by Senator Osotsi, who did a very, very good job. Mr. Speaker, sir, in a country where we have the culture of praising the postman for delivering mails, we may not seem to care a lot that the central government, in the age of Internet of Things, has the possibility of ensuring that all these deductions are forwarded where they're supposed to. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is not lost to us that most of the developed countries, they use their pension funds to fund infrastructural development projects, and therefore develop their funds, develop the wealth of their nationalities, and by so doing, they ensure that the people, as they retire, their pensions are well taken care of. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is important that we realize that the county governments, and at this juncture, I would want to take exemption to place the governor of Nyeri County, Mwalimu Mutahi Kahiga, having made it possible that Nyeri, as it stands today, Nyeri County has no pending bills, that it's one of the counties that has religiously lamented all the deductions, because we believe, and he shares with me the belief, that human development and human capital development is an equally important part of development. Mr. Speaker, sir, when we look at what the common practice and best practices in the other countries, we realize that there is nobody, more so on the pension and all the deductions by the employees, they are not held back because the laws that govern those countries are very punitive. The question, Mr. Speaker, sir, why don't we make it a mandatory, as recommended by the CPIC committee, that the first charge are those statutory deductions, they are supposed to, they are forwarded as they are deducted. Mr. Speaker, sir, unless we change the way we do our things, we'll continue having a discouraged, a demoralized workforce, and we expect them to deliver. This will still remain, this will largely remain a mirage, because a demoralized workforce cannot be able to deliver on anything. Mr. Speaker, sir, moving forward, we must put mechanisms in place that all those officers, be they governors or CEOs of organizations, when they do not lament pensions that are supposed, and deductions, statutory deductions, then we must put mechanisms in place to ensure that they are followed. Mr. Speaker, sir, as we start today, I have before my office a list of pensioners, teachers who have retired, who worked for many years with TSC. They retired before they could get their pension. Some of them in their late years now, Mr. Speaker, they are trying to struggle with ill health, and they have no means of survival. Mr. Speaker, sir, as a country, we must embrace
the morals of ensuring that we do to others what we would want them to do to us. And this can only happen, Mr. Speaker, sir, if we ensure that the workforce who work for this nation, who work for this county, for the counties, are given their rightful dues by ensuring that we submit the pensions, and these pensions are prudently invested. Mr. Speaker, sir, we know the Kenya Kwanza government is embarking on a very radical scale of changing the way we do our pension, the way we do our social security, and most importantly, the way we do our taxes, including the housing levy. These monies, if not invested prudently, Mr. Speaker, it will leave a big dent with the workforce. It will leave the workforce demoralized, and therefore it is important that we ensure that we encourage. And I would want to congratulate Senator Ososi for these wonderful recommendations, and kindly the CP committee should see to it that it is implemented to the letter. Mr. Speaker, sir, I support.
Senator Cheriot.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to congratulate the PIC committee for a job well done. This is what we expect of our committees, Mr. Speaker, to respond to issues that are of great concern to the people that we represent in this House. Pension funds, Mr. Speaker, are very important tools and financial instruments which we have abused for a long time in this country. Mr. Speaker, it's unfortunate that we are here today discussing county pension, and we know very well the similar challenges that people continue to have even with their savings with the national government. Like one of the senators observed, Mr. Speaker, earlier, unfortunately, Senate has not been able to properly resolve and speak so candidly about the issue of county pension funds. About 2 or 3 of them, Mr. Speaker, in the 11th Parliament, Mr. Speaker, we tried to address that particular issue. But as was rightly observed, Mr. Speaker, partisan interest came in the way, for which through Parliament was not able to wade over that particular storm. Unfortunately, the same was worse in the 12th Parliament, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, as an institution, we continue to stand indicted in how the various county pension funds are run, and the fact, Mr. Speaker, that we haven't been able to give counties a particular law that guides how their pension schemes are managed, how better to run them, whether it is proper for them to be as many as we already know, Mr. Speaker, or to collapse them into one county pension scheme, Mr. Speaker, for our county government workers, just like we have one for the national government employees, Mr. Speaker. Nonetheless, having said that, Mr. Speaker, I want to appreciate this first attempt to first collect that which is due to them, Mr. Speaker, in the first place. Because, you know, there are many, Mr. Speaker, defunct municipals and county councils, which up to date, Mr. Speaker, have never been able to settle their pending bills with these various county pension schemes, Mr. Speaker. And it's unfortunate that it has taken us close to 12 years before we can stamp our foot with authority and demand, Mr. Speaker, that these monies must be paid. Because in the absence of which, Mr. Speaker, there are elderly people who gave their best of life and energy to service to the country, but right now are wallowing in extreme poverty, Mr. Speaker, and are unable to access their pension. Mr. Speaker, it is my sincere hope that the recommendations of this report will be forwarded and implemented, Mr. Speaker. Though over and above, I want to challenge the committee of Senator Osotsi to bring a bill to Parliament, Mr. Speaker, specifically on how these pension funds, Mr. Speaker, can have a right to first charge, just like KRA has agency notice, just like NSSF and NHIF, Mr. Speaker, where many employers, because of the strict nature with which we did the law, and Mr. Speaker, and the compliance demands on all employers, Mr. Speaker, the default rate is really low. But so long as people know that you can choose to pay, you can delay, you can deduct and use it to do other things, Mr. Speaker, with very minimal repercussions, Mr. Speaker, then you will have these particular challenges, Mr. Speaker. Many of these bills, Mr. Speaker, you are not even able to determine with accuracy how much is owed to specific county pension funds by the various county governments, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, while this is a good start, Mr. Speaker,
there is a lot that needs to be done. And it is my sincere hope, Mr. Speaker, that as a House, we shall rise to the occasion and guide our county staffers, Mr. Speaker, into pension schemes that they can rely upon, Mr. Speaker, in their retirement. It will be impossible, Mr. Speaker, for counties to attract good talent if they know that they are working for organizations upon which, on retirement, Mr. Speaker, they cannot draw pension. The reason why, for example, staffers of parliament are comfortable and they do their best and they're exceptional in their duties, Mr. Speaker, is that they know here in parliament we have a staff pension scheme, Mr. Speaker, that is well run, well managed. They know that in their retirement years, Mr. Speaker, they will enjoy the fruits of their labor. They will not be destitute old people relying on handouts from their children and well-wishers, Mr. Speaker. It's unfortunate if people work, they slave their useful years, Mr. Speaker, only to suffer in retirement, Mr. Speaker, after all that is done. Therefore, it's my sincere hope, Senator Osotsi, that you shall give us specific bill that we shall guide through both houses of parliament that will give agency notice to these institutions so that we provide clarity in this space. We haven't been able to do well, and that has to be said. We stand indicted up to date as a House of Parliament because many employees of our county governments are still in confusion. The last thing that I want to say, Mr. Speaker, on this topic, Mr. Speaker, is that even the county pension funds that are in existence, they need to be creative, Mr. Speaker. There are opportunities for business for them, even with the said counties. I don't understand, Mr. Speaker, why county governments have to go and borrow from commercial banks and earn money to other people. Yet, they can borrow from their own pension funds, Mr. Speaker, and earn interest. And that's the same money which our pensioners can enjoy in their retirement. That's a safe avenue for investment. The same county pension schemes, Mr. Speaker, should be seen to be investing in our various counties, Mr. Speaker. All this money that we are borrowing from World Bank and all these Danida and development partners, it is other people's pensions, Mr. Speaker. How stupid can we be as a people, Mr. Speaker, that you borrow the pensions of other people and enrich them, ensure that they live more comfortably, yet we are packing money here, Mr. Speaker, and only lending it to other people to do projects that cannot be visible. I believe we can draw value from our county pensions, Mr. Speaker, by ensuring that these pension funds invest in the very counties where they are collecting this money, in projects that will even benefit the same people that contribute to it, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, I challenge you, Senator Osotsi, and your committee. There needs to be clarity in this space. We need to sit with these managers of pension funds, Mr. Speaker, and open their minds to the opportunities that exist in our various county governments, so that when employees of county retire, they know that at the end of the month, they have something that is worth of comfort to them, that they will celebrate and know that they didn't waste their years working for our county governments, Mr. Speaker. With those very many remarks, this is a good start, Senator Osotsi, but bring the bill so that we streamline this space. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Osotsi, being the mover of this motion, kindly proceed to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I must thank all the members who have contributed to this motion. And I must thank members for overwhelmingly supporting this motion. Mr. Speaker, I spent a lot of time when I was moving this motion, and I don't think I'll say much, but just to clarify on one issue, Mr. Speaker, the issue of the multi-sectorial forum, for the one that is going to be appointed by the CS for Treasury. This was important to the committee because the committee faced two major challenges. One, the issue of harmonizing the pension principal balances, because there were variations. The figures that were quoted by counties were varying with the figures that were quoted by the pension schemes. Number two, the issue of interest. Interest charge and the other charges were a significant portion of the total pension that is owed. So we thought that that may not be in our domain. We create a legal forum where the stakeholders can agree on these two issues. And that has to be done immediately this motion is passed, we expect the Treasury CS to come up with a task force and gazette it within 30 days. Thereafter, Mr. Speaker, that task force is supposed to submit to this Senate a report, a final report, on how they are going to implement the recommendation of this Senate within 60 days. And Mr. Speaker, we will also be expecting that this House will be on a bi-weekly basis be getting an update report. So we have internal mechanism of ensuring that the recommendations of this report are implemented. And this is for the benefit of not just this Senate, but also our government, which is very keen on promoting a saving culture through pension funds, and also the pensioners who are languishing in poverty. Mr. Speaker, I don't want to go beyond that. I beg to reply, and also request that pursuant to Standing Order number 66.3, the putting of the question on this motion be deferred to a later date. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is so deferred. Now, honorable senators, we will now move to prosecute order number Order number 16. Clerk, kindly proceed to call that order.
Order number 16, the Public Service Values and Principles Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bills number 46 of 2022, second reading.
The Honorable Chiranke. Yes, Honorable Chiranke.
Sorry.
You have 45 minutes, but you don't have to speak for the entire 45
25 minutes.
Maximum 45 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir, I remember I was moving, but unfortunately, some members felt that I should be moving when the whole House is here. But that we said, Mr. Speaker, I think this is a straightforward amendment. And I would want to not to belabor the point. It is about the Public Service Values and Principles Amendment Bill 2022, Mr. Speaker, National Assembly. So, Speaker, what we want to do, the intent of this amendment, Mr. Speaker, is to capture Article 10 on National Values and Principles of Good Governance. Mr. Speaker, as you are aware, under Article 232, the values and principles of public service has been provided by our Constitution. And therefore, one of them is high professionals, ethics, efficiency, effective, and economic use of resources. The Speaker, I can say without fear of contradiction that one of the soft underbelly the growth of our economy, the Speaker, has always been the high wage bill. In fact, what is shocking counties, Mr. Speaker, including Meru, is the high wage bill. For example, in Nandi, Mr. Speaker, out of 7.5 billion in the last financial year 2022-2023, a huge chunk of went to wage bill. And you know, if we are not careful, Mr. Speaker, we are going to turn, Mr. Speaker, our counties into employment bureaus. But when you look at, and also, Mr. Speaker, there have been a soft underbelly in this country where there has been a feeling that some communities are dominating the public service, Mr. Speaker. But when you look at Article 232, we must show the diverse community representation in Kenya, Mr. Speaker, ensuring that we have that reflection. What we are trying to do with this bill, Mr. Speaker, is to present annual reports of human resource combination and human resource combination from all state organs, Mr. Speaker, county governments through county to county assemblies and Parliament of Republic of Kenya. When I say Parliament under Article 93, it means both the National Assembly and the Senate, Mr. Speaker. They must present human resource. And that is why we are amending by bringing in authorized officer means any officer appointed within the public service or service to its delegated. The Speaker, and to define is the presidents of the company, vice presidents, those people who hold the highest governance within that level, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, the intention is so that we know how many the public service, Mr. Speaker, and you know there have been audits or public service by the Office of the Auditor General, Mr. Speaker, on several occasions. So the intent of this amendment is a straightforward, Mr. Speaker, is to ensure that we reflect the diverse communities, Mr. Speaker, and then also we look at the gender, the race, the ethnicity, and also whether we have people living with disability, Mr. Speaker. And then so that, and the reason we want those reports to be coming to the Senate, and I want my colleagues to get this, Mr. Speaker, is to ensure, Mr. Speaker, we can oversight. You can come and question, for example, university, counties, state organs, Mr. Speaker, so that we know, so that we don't depend on NCIC. We want when NCIC do their reports, they table so that we can do our oversight, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, it concerns counties as much as I know, Mr. Speaker. For example, I can give an example, Mr. Speaker, as I will use the next 5 minutes so that my colleagues can have opportunity. For example, there was a report on how universities' employment by ethnicity or by ethnicity, Mr. Speaker, Auditor General, in the year 2019, 2020, 2021, or 2020, 2021. You look, for example, Dedan Kimathi University of Technology, they had 556 workers, Mr. Speaker. Workers from dominant tribe in the county were 372. That means 66.9% of workers at Dedan Kimathi University came from the local community. And you know, Mr. Speaker, under the NCIC Act, there is 30% threshold. Mr. Speaker, let's pick another one, like your county, Mary University of Science and Technology. The number of workers, Mr. Speaker, is 403. Workers from the dominant community, the Njurinjeka and the rest is 265. That is 67%, Mr. Speaker. So it is that, so we should be shown that there should be 30%, Mr. Speaker. Let me pick one, maybe the university that has stayed long. Like let's look, Mr. Speaker. I'm trying to get one that is within Nairobi, so that members can understand where I'm coming from. Like Maseno University. Maseno University, Mr. Speaker, has a 1,771. Local community, you know where Maseno is. There are 751. That is 64%, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, so that I appear fair, let's do Masai Mara. Mr. Speaker, Masai Mara has 566 workers. 206 come from the local community. That is at 6%. So you can see there is some fairness at that level, Mr. Speaker. I was not able to get the one for one thing is Kisii University. This is a very interesting one. Kisii University has 982 workers, 690, Mr. Speaker, are from the dominant community. 70% come from the local community, Mr. Speaker. You can see Masai Mara. I don't know why Masai Mara has somehow beaten that combination, which means maybe the management or how different it is, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, you can see, I'm just using that example. So these are the reports that will need to be submitted from all state organs, from everybody from counties, Mr. Speaker, and I think that is very important for us to understand, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, these values, and that is why when we are hearing, Mr. Speaker, I normally see adverts saying PWDs, women and youth are encouraged. It is part of the values, Article 232, Article 10 of national values. Now we are creating authorized officer who will ensure there is this combination of human resource based on what public service commission is, Mr. Speaker. So, Speaker, the third point I wanted to make is, I know most communities, Mr. Speaker, especially that come from Senator Mungatana, Senator Mwenda Gataya, they have always felt that they are not part of the national cake, because they have always accused other communities that they are eating all the cake, Mr. Speaker. And they normally say you can't have your cake and eat it, Mr. Speaker. So the point I'm trying to make is this. I want to ask communities that think they are marginalized, Mr. Speaker, that they are not marginalized. The law is very clear, Article 232 and Article 10. What we need to do is to ensure people in public service, commission, and other, including county public service board, follow the law. So I don't see why people say tribe X is dominant or tribe Y is dominant. The Constitution is very clear. So these people who are employing people beyond without reflection of diverse communities, Mr. Speaker, they are violating the Constitution. And I hope the Ministry of Public Service, the county public service boards across, the senators, Mr. Speaker, you know, we are obsessed with audit on issues of finance, IT, but we have never as a house asked ourselves what is the audit of human resource. As the most powerful vice chair of the county public accounts, and you have appeared before my committee, Mr. Speaker, we have sample counties that have issues of human resource, Mr. Speaker. You even go to counties and you find governors have hired cheering squad as part of the public service in the counties. Mr. Speaker, you find even other counties have hired staff to only praise and worship the governor, Mr. Speaker, and yet they are earning. Other counties, we were hearing our stories, Mr. Speaker, where governors have hired people to carry the seat to functions, Mr. Speaker, or even public toilets to the public functions, Mr. Speaker. Even, Mr. Speaker, governors have hired goons to maim and undermine, where we were seeing allegations of a sniper, the blogger for Meru, was being maimed and killed, Mr. Speaker. If you look keenly, the people who have been accused and are in court are people who work with county governments. So you never know whether these county governments are becoming criminal enterprise, Mr. Speaker. They are busy shouting down senators and other leaders. You have seen a number of counties, Mr. Speaker, where when local leaders want to question county governments, they are being shouted down. And that charade must stop, Mr. Speaker. And they are violating the public service values, Mr. Speaker. And I really wanted to emphasize on that point. So to all Kenyans watching us, Mr. Speaker, through you, there is no lacuna in law. It is that the County Public Service Board, the Public Service Commission are just violating the Constitution, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, number 2, just to run through, because the duties of authorized officer in Kenya, Mr. Speaker, shall be responsible for the promotion of values and principles under Article 10 and 232 and submit quarterly reports to the Commission on extent to which values and principles have been complied within the ministry. So, Speaker, is a person who has been appointed by a government department or agency to perform certain compliance and enforcement of duties, Mr. Speaker. And many people who is authorized officer within the company, Mr. Speaker, I have mentioned them: Chief Finance Officer, Vice President, CEO, Secretary, or any other. What are the values of public service, Mr. Speaker? Values, there are values within the, one is respect for democracy, respect for people, integrity, stewardship, and excellence, Mr. Speaker. The values of public service in Kenya, of course, they should be responsive, prompt, effective, impartial, and equitable provision of services. Mr. Speaker, the ethics that are in public service, of course, all of us know, it covers issues of honest and transparency in government, both levels, and dealing with matters like bribery, corruption, police corruption, legislative ethics, regulatory ethics, Mr. Speaker, conflict of interest, avoiding the appearance of propriety, open governance. Mr. Speaker, I happen to chair the caucus which you approve of the open governance, Mr. Speaker, where we are encouraging legislative awareness or openness. We are encouraging executive to learn what we call open contracting. I'm a member of the open governance program that we have started in this house. And it is courtesy of your office that you approve that caucus, Mr. Speaker. Openness and transparency is one of the key, Mr. Speaker. Also, public administration, Mr. Speaker, as you are aware, of course, the service values in public service: honest and integrity, impartiality, respect for rule of law, respect for persons, diligence, economy, and effectiveness. Mr. Speaker, what are the duties of public service? Of course, every public servant, Mr. Speaker, this is in conclusion, must work for the benefit. And that is why Mo used to say, what about Wanjiku? I remember the other day, Mr. Speaker, it is the aim of every person, including all of us who are here, Mr. Speaker, who are here. We must serve the public. It is our agenda to ensure we serve the public, Mr. Speaker. When you maim and kill a blocker, are you serving the public? You are not, Mr. Speaker. When you harass my journalist in Nandi, who is covering harassment of county enforcement officers at Nandi sub-county, Mr. Speaker, are you serving the public? No. There is what we call absolute power corrupts absolutely. And abuse and misuse of power. You are violating the values. All of us are public servants. We must carry, the way you are sitting there, Mr. Speaker, is you carry your duty with diligence, with honesty, with transparency, with openness. And that is why all of us, when we want to queue to speak, you follow a certain order. Because it has been provided for, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I was having a discussion, and these counties, governors must know they are workers. They are people's servants. They are not rulers. I don't know, Mr. Speaker, you are the one who mentioned yesterday that governors are not supposed to be rulers. They are supposed to be leaders. They are not to rule. When you are a governor, you don't rule. You are not a dictator, Mr. Speaker. For example, I was having a discussion with the Garissa women rep, Mheshimiwa Amina, today. And what is happening in Garissa, Mr. Speaker, presided over by Governor Natif Jama of Garissa, is unfortunate. I am getting complaints and information that when women go to deliver in county public hospitals, Mr. Speaker, and it is very strategic, it's very tragic, Mr. Speaker. After they have delivered, they are being sexually exploited as they recover, Mr. Speaker. It is very unfortunate, Mr. Speaker, in those counties. We must call out. Ours is to represent all the counties, Mr. Speaker. When you go to Garissa, Mr. Speaker, and other counties, you find out that water that we are giving here free, Mr. Speaker, the people of Garissa cannot access water, Mr. Speaker. And then they are water boosters. And Mr. Speaker, mark you, in the last financial year, 2022-2023, Garissa received over 12 billion in equitable shareable revenue. Can you believe there are people who are sleeping without drinking water, Mr. Speaker? Can you believe women are being sexually harassed in county hospitals, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, the county governments must do their job. And when we see, and you know, Mr. Speaker, the governor of Garissa is serving second and final term. You know, when a governor is new, we could excuse them because they are still learning. The way yours is grappling with everything, left and left and center, Mr. Speaker. Even Nandi is a sad story. Before elections, Mr. Speaker, you was truly, if I didn't actively evade, the governor had even hired people on county government of Nandi payroll to go and heckle other leaders or to cheer him while attending functions, or even to be the agents of nominations, or to be part of the rigging parade, Mr. Speaker. We must call out, Mr. Speaker, that the issue of public service is honest, is sacrifice, is integrity, is passionate to serve the people, Mr. Speaker. And that is why when I saw under Article 34, and I'm happy you spoke to it yesterday, on the issue of media, Mr. Speaker. Counties now, after the debate yesterday, Mr. Speaker, I receive a lot of calls from media who work in counties. They are saying it is safer for them to report stories of baby shower and other stories instead of reporting about county functions. Because the moment they report and they are being suspected, they report to put a county in bad line, Mr. Speaker, they are being maimed, bludgeoned, being attacked, being harassed as they go to the houses, Mr. Speaker. And that is why we should not make mockery of Article 34 on media freedom in this republic, Mr. Speaker. And you know what happened? The reason Nandi media is being under attack in Nandi County is because apparently somebody in social media filmed rats that were walking majestically within Kapsabet County Referral Hospital. That story, the media picked it up and ran. Because the governor felt he was being portrayed in a bad light, he decided to profile and ensure the media are being intimidated daily in Nandi. I want to call Kenya Union of Journalists and other sector holders and even Ministry of Interior to protect our journalists, Mr. Speaker. You saw Meru. Meru, I highly doubt there is no journalist who would want to report about anything about county governments. Because they know if you report, you can disappear like sniper, Mr. Speaker. And we continue to condole and wish well the family as they recover for that tragic loss. Here in Nairobi, Mr. Speaker, and that is why media, when a governor appears, you don't see any story about that county. Because either brown envelope is working or media is being intimidated. I want to assure the media as the Senate Republic of Kenya through you that we shall always protect the media freedom. But they must come halfway. The only way we can oversight the counties is media to allow us highlighting those challenges, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, with those very many remarks, this is a straightforward amendment. I want to say that let us process it quickly, Mr. Speaker, and allow me to call my brother, Senator Danson Mulamwamba Mungatana, the only one who shoots straight from the hip, Senator Danson Mungatana, to second me, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Mungatana, proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Honorable Senator Cherargei, the only Nandi warrior, Mr. Speaker, that we know, for bringing this bill and moving it so ably, Mr. Speaker, and explaining the parameters of this bill, Mr. Speaker. And it is my pleasure, Mr. Speaker, to second this bill that is so crucial. Mr. Speaker, many years ago, as a young man, I was elected as a member of Parliament in the National Assembly. Mr. Speaker, in the first week of that election, we were brought into the House of the National Assembly, and we were asked, Mr. Speaker, to actually go through orientation. Mr. Speaker, I remember the Honorable Speaker Ole Kaparo taking us personally around the fields of the National Assembly. Mr. Speaker, I, a man from Garsen constituency then, Mr. Speaker, I would work with Honorable Speaker Kaparo, and I would hear, Mr. Speaker, various members of Parliament greeting other workers within the Parliament. And Mr. Speaker, they would greet them in their mother tongue. Mr. Speaker, so you reach the dining hall, one member of Parliament is saying, you know, you go to the next, in one of the offices, Mr. Speaker, you hear another one, Chamuge, you go to the next one, you know, it went on like that. And then I asked the Honorable Speaker, Mr. Kaparo, when will I get a chance of greeting someone in Kipokomo in this vicinity of Parliament? And Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Kaparo did not have an answer for me. Mr. Speaker, I actually caused a lot of problems because one of the first motions that I wrote and sought the Speaker's approval is that we must have ethnic diversity even in this Parliament at that time, Mr. Speaker. And I spoke very strongly. That's when the Honorable Speaker called me aside and told me, no, there is a different way of doing it. Let us do this and that and that. And Mr. Speaker, we were able to find people who are from Tana River County now getting some opportunities to be employed through affirmative action. Mr. Speaker, why am I giving this story? I'm giving this story to say balancing ethnic opportunities for employment is a sad thing. It affected even Parliament when I was here the first time as a young man in the National Assembly. Mr. Speaker, balancing ethnic opportunities for employment in this country has been abused in the highest way possible. Mr. Speaker, when I'm speaking to this, I know right now, if you go to national public service offices, Mr. Speaker, and you ask from Tana River County, how many people are there? You will find very few, Mr. Speaker. It is not idle talk when people say we are in actual fact marginalized. And Mr. Speaker, this bill is saying, going forward, all these national institutions, including the public county and national and county institutions, will have to be filing reports on the number of people who are employed from various ethnic communities. So this is a very good bill, Mr. Speaker, that I support with all my heart. Mr. Speaker, if today you go and ask how many Pokomos are employed in this department of government, How many Ormas are employed in this government department? How many Wailwanas? How many Wardays? How many of these people from the minority communities in Tana River counties are employed in these departments? You will find in many places, Mr. Speaker, you cannot find these people there. And Mr. Speaker, it's not that our people are not qualified. It's not that our people are not able to do those jobs. It is just that we are not given those opportunities simply because the Public Service Commission has not adhered even to the new constitution. The requirement, Mr. Speaker, in Article starting with 130, it speaks about how the president should compose the national executive. It says it is the president, the deputy president, and the cabinet. But that cabinet, Mr. Speaker, it must reflect regional diversity, community diversity. Mr. Speaker, if the president and the cabinet are pushed by the Constitution and Article 130 to be obedient to the question of regional diversity, community diversity, why is it that the Public Service Commission does not see it as an important category for them to check how many people are employed in their various departments? Mr. Speaker, if you go to Article 232, Mr. Speaker, Article 232 speaks to the requirement, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if I could be protected, because I want your attention. Mr. Speaker, if you go to Article 232 of the Constitution.
You are protected, Senator Mugatana, but the protection is a bit threatened, so maybe.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, let me not go there. But Mr. Speaker, I wanted to say, Article 232, Mr. Speaker, which gives the values of the public service, Mr. Speaker, is so clear. And for the Kenyans who are listening to me, Mr. Speaker, and they can turn with me to Article 232, you would see it gives the values of public service, the values and the principles of public service. Mr. Speaker, in fact, the entire chapter 13 of the Constitution, it discusses the values and the whole thing about what public service should be like. And Mr. Speaker, when you look, it says that these values apply not just to the national, but also to the county governments, Mr. Speaker. It applies to all state corporations, and it applies to both levels of government. Mr. Speaker, it is so clear what the Kenyan people were saying. And I want to read in particular that some of the values of public service, it says high standards of professional ethics. Mr. Speaker, efficient, effective, and economic use of resources. Mr. Speaker, it goes on to talk about involving people in policy making. It goes about to talk transparency in provision of public information. It talks about fair competition and merit to be the basis of appointments and promotion, but subject to representation of Kenya's diverse communities. So, Mr. Speaker, the Constitution, the Kenyan people in 2010, they said, yes, let us have merit, let us have fair competition when we are employing people at the national government, but let us in state corporation, at the county government. But Mr. Speaker, the question of fair competition and merits as the basis of appointments and promotion must be representation of diverse communities in Kenya, so that the Kenyans who are in Tana River County, Mr. Speaker, the various communities who are there, the Wata, Mr. Speaker, the Wailuana, Mr. Speaker, the small communities all over Tana River, Mr. Speaker, the spread of Kenya's communities is more superior in terms of looking at what will be the category of employment as opposed to fair competition and fair competition and merit. So, Mr. Speaker, we are saying that we must have affirmative action. We must have, yes, merit. We must have, yes, fair competition. But in order for us to obey the Constitution, there must be representation of Kenya's diverse communities in every state department. Mr. Speaker, I live in this country, and it is true in some state departments, and when Kenyans were passing this constitution, they are well aware of what I'm talking about. You will go to a state corporation, you will go to a parastatal, and people are speaking mother tongue. You will go to a whole department, and people are speaking in mother tongue. Mother tongue is the lingua franca of that department. And Mr. Speaker, this is what this amendment is seeking to make happen. That even if you are employing in the Public Service Commission, please, 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 and Kenyans who have passed this constitution, Kenyans who are listening and they have seen this happen, they want these mistakes corrected. It cannot be that in a parastatal, in a state corporation, in a department, you cannot find a Pokomo, you cannot find an Orma, you cannot find a Kipsigis, even one person from Wata community. You cannot find these other communities, and you have one dominant community, so dominant in that department that they speak mother tongue. Mr. Speaker, this bill, this amendment bill is saying now, going forward, we need to file all returns. And Mr. Speaker, this bill is very specific. It is saying that the requirement, if we approve this bill as Senate, and it has already been approved in the National Assembly, the requirement now is that the new clause that is being set is saying that there will be details on the human resource establishment within the Service Commission, outlining the total number of employees and highlighting their gender, their age, ethnicity, and whether they are persons with disabilities. Mr. Speaker, this amendment to the Public Service Values and Principles, Amendment Bill 2022, must be supported by this Senate. And Mr. Speaker, it is so fundamental. It is so fundamental. And Mr. Speaker, I have addressed myself a lot to what has been happening at the national level. But, Mr. Speaker, the levels of accountability are not just to the national departments and state corporations and parastatals. No, it also goes to county governments. Mr. Speaker, our county governments have ignored the principles of ethnic balancing. You will find, Mr. Speaker, a governor who comes in, he comes and brings in a majority from the community that supported him. That governor finishes his term or is voted out, and the next governor who comes in, he does everything possible to reduce the numbers of the previous governor, and they bring in other members so that he can create a majority of his own community that supported him during the election. Mr. Speaker, this must come to an end. We are asking as senators that governors, wherever you are listening to us, please rationalize your public service. There are county public service boards that have been set up in all 47 counties. But governors, Mr. Speaker, have gone there to intimidate members of those county public service boards so that they impose their will on these people. Mr. Speaker, I wish that even those people who are serving in the county public service boards are given security of tenure so that governors are not able to interfere with the processes that are there. Mr. Speaker, we have seen in counties like myself, like Tana River County, Mr. Speaker, even people making demonstrations against the county public service commission, public service board. Why? Because they are making employment opportunities for young people not accessible to them. And Mr. Speaker, some of the appointments, they advertise positions. In Tana River County, Mr. Speaker, we have seen the county public service board. It announces positions. They say these positions are vacant. They are supposed to be filled. Young people go to cyber cafes. They download their documents. They send them to the relevant links. Some of them, they take their papers in person. And then, Mr. Speaker, the county public service board, they just keep quiet. And people don't know what has happened. Have those places been filled? Have those places been left empty? Nobody knows what is happening. The next thing you hear, oh, people have been employed, and there's no transparency in what is happening. Mr. Speaker, these provisions of balancing ethnicity, of balancing communities, just like they apply at the national level, they must apply even at the county level. Mr. Speaker, governors must be fair to everyone. All these are our children. Every person within the community, they are our children. Mr. Speaker, even when you look at some of us, personally, Mr. Speaker, I am of mixed ethnicity. My mother is a Taita, my father is a Pokomo. Although we are leaning towards the paternal side, and that's why we were brought up speaking the language of our fathers and so on. When we get married to other mixed communities, the children, they carry quarter bloodlines. What do we call them, Mr. Speaker? I'm asking governors, I'm asking employers at the county public service boards, I'm asking employers at the public service commission at the national level, please, 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 all these are Kenyans. Let us treat our people fairly. Let us treat people who are with disabilities as is required in this bill. Give them opportunities, give them a chance so that they can also make a useful contribution to the communities that we live in. Mr. Speaker, I was in the Buxton Estates last week, this week in fact, Mr. Speaker, when the Deputy President was in Mombasa and addressing all the 6 leaders from 6 counties on the question of drug abuse and illicit drinks. Mr. Afterwards, we were able to go to the affordable housing estate in the Buxton areas. And Mr. Speaker, one of the persons who served us is a person who is actually living with disability, Mr. Speaker. And I found it very profound that in that setup, they were able to be sensitive to that. But that is not what is happening in our public service, county public service boards, Mr. Speaker. You will find not kept, there's discrimination, and even ethnic balancing is not observed. So, Mr. Speaker, I rise to wholly support this bill, and I urge senators who will speak to this bill, Mr. Speaker, to support it 100%. We need these returns so that if the Public Service Commission has been unfair to Tana River, to the ethnic composition, then we know and we can punish the people who are responsible for those actions that are against the principles of public service as espoused within Article 232 of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, we need to bring this country to a higher level, and we will not tire to speak it in the floor of this House, Mr. Speaker. It's the only way we are going to change this nation to be a better nation. Mr. Speaker, with those many remarks, I beg to second. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Senators, I now propose the question that the Public Service Values and Principles Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bills number 46 of 2022 be now read a second time. I will call upon the members who have expressed interest to contribute to this particular bill. Senator Mwenda Gataya.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I am very much impressed by this bill, which has been brought by my good friend Senator Cherargei, which has captured quite a lot of abnormalities, especially in our institutions. We have witnessed situations where this constitution has been violated blatantly by those who are supposed to protect what Kenyans really brought on board. Honorable Speaker, I would want to quote a very particular case, especially in our Parliamentary Service Commission, where we are. I happen to be Senator Tharaka Nithi County, and I come from a tribe called Tharaka. I want to go on record, Honorable Speaker, that no Tharaka speaking person in this Parliamentary Service Commission, from both the National Assembly and the Senate, the entire workforce. The shameful, Honorable Speaker, and I've raised that issue with the chairperson of that commission. I've also raised the issue with the commissioners, that in the entire Public Service Commission, the Parliamentary Service Commission, sorry, Honorable Speaker, the entire Parliamentary Service Commission, we do not have a single Tharaka speaking individual, not even a tingle, not even a sweeper. Those who are in charge are supposed to check their records, and they will establish that we do not have a single Tharaka speaking employee in Parliamentary Service Commission of Kenya. It is very shameful, and it's something, Honorable Speaker, that this bill is going to adequately address, because we have witnessed in several institutions, in several entities, in several commissions, in several parastatus. If you go to counties, Honorable Speaker, you will be surprised to find that almost the entire membership, the entire workforce belongs to one ethnic group, which is raping, which is violating the constitution that we put in place as Kenyans, where we are supposed to equalize all Kenyans and give them equal chances to make sure that they serve this nation. But of course, Honorable Speaker, we have institutions where people have thought that this is our time to hit, it's our time to employ our people. And I really want to quote what Honorable Mukatana just said, that some governors are too arrogant, especially when they want to employ in their counties. You find that a governor comes in, employs 3/4 of his kinsmen and relatives, and those people who maybe in one way or the other campaigned for him. Another governor comes in, he sacks or most of those that were there before, and it's something that is supposed to be addressed by this bill which is coming before us today, because as a Senate we are supposed to put these strong measures on board to make sure that we have serious regulations, serious laws, serious obedience to the constitution which we put in place as Kenyans. So, Honorable Speaker, it is very sad. Even the PWDs, I happen to be in the Committee on National Cohesion. We have seen some very serious irregularities, especially in our, even in the universities, even in our parastatus. So it's something, Honorable Speaker, that is supposed to be addressed, and I'm happy that this bill has found its way here, and I'm sure once this bill goes through, we are not going to see some of these things that are happening today. So in my own way, I strongly wish to support the bill, and the ways that the Senate make sure that the bill goes through so that we can have equality and give our people equal opportunities to serve diligently in this country. I support our Speaker.
Senator Lekina Ledama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this bill the amendment to the Public Service Values and Principle, National Assembly Bill number, what is it? Bill number 46 of 2022. Mr. Speaker, let me first of all appreciate both the National Assembly and the Senate for coming up with the concept of ensuring that bills, which are as important as this, are co-sponsored by a member from the lower house and a member of this house. I want to appreciate the two members, the distinguished Senator Cherargei, as well as the Honorable, I can't remember his name, I think Rahim Dahoud, for literally having foresight in governance. This is what defines anticipatory governance. This is what tries to avoid difficult situations where the country becomes completely unmanageable. Mr. Speaker, the two distinguished senators who spoke before me, Senator Mungatana, who seconded the bill, and Senator Mofaya, have attempted to demystify what this bill is really all about. This bill promotes nothing but meritocracy. This bill allows Kenyans to be able to be given an opportunity to serve their country without considering which clan they come from, which tribe they come from, giving them an opportunity. But you know, there's one thing that really destroys the concept of governance in this country. One is this nonsense called clanism. Is this nonsense called tribalism. Mr. Speaker, if you go to Narok County today, you know, in most cases people in Kenya say, they talk about something called state capture. In Narok County, we have family capture, where one family, the family of the governor, Patrick Ndutu, is the ones that calls all the shots in the country. Is the ones that gets all contracts. You know, one thing which is very sad is that the governor from Narok comes from the same clan as I do. But I'm ashamed, because if you go to Narok County, the entire human resource currently is from my clan. Where does it put all the other clans which exist in Narok? If you find the tug of war on a daily basis between brothers who speak the same language, who when they get sick tomorrow, they will need each other to be able to donate blood. But what the governor has done, he has completely ignored meritocracy and decided to put everyone who is from his clan. Every single contract in Narok County is given to members of the family. If today someone dies and the county government decides to donate money, like recently an MCA died, and when the MCA died, the county governor of Narok donated about 2.5 million. But the tent was provided by a family member. So 600,000 shillings went to pay the tent for the family member. 170,000 shillings went to pay security, who all of them were from the same clan. Mr. Speaker, this bill is long overdue. What this bill is going to do is that it is going to ensure that we carry out specific audits of human resource. We want to know in every single county government who is employed in that county government. Mr. Speaker, this bill actually complements another bill, which is a bill sponsored mostly by the IMF and the World Bank, which I really don't subscribe to their thinking, on the issue of conflict of interest. When the framers of the Constitution brought about Article 232, this is what they had in mind. And I have to say, the framers of the Constitution were thinking, having the future generation in mind. Today, Mr. Speaker, we talk about the girl child, the girl child. Every single project out there is to defend the girl child. Mr. Speaker, today in this country, even in this House, we talk about the two-third gender rule. And when we are discussing about the two-third gender rule, there's only one thing in our mind, the female gender. Because of our cultural context where women have really been treated as second-class citizens and they have been left behind. But do we ask ourselves, what about the boy child? If we put all our effort and just say girl child, what about the boy child? Who is going to support the boy child? Mr. Speaker, these are things that we need to be able to contextualize. We need to be able to think with having a mind which is future-centric, thinking about what should we anticipate will happen in future. Mr. Speaker, when I talk about anticipatory governance, and this is a subject that all of us must start thinking now about, has got to cut across in everything. It begins with the human resource. If you only employ one clan, what happens in future? What about the other clan? Will they be resilient? Will they be resentful? What will happen to other ethnic groups? Mr. Speaker, if we start thinking only about the current situation, only focusing on the past, then we will miss the point. We have now to start thinking about the future. Some of the challenges that we are facing, Mr. Speaker, has got to do with all this debt that we are accumulating as a country. That debt that we are accumulating as a country, if we put mediocres to be the ones running because they are our family members in state departments, you know, they'll continue just lining their pockets, and yet we've left somebody who is very intelligent, who can be able to come in and provide good thinking, but because that person is not related to me, I leave him out there. Because that person did not vote for me, I leave him out there. Then we put ourselves in a bigger hole so that the future generation, when the future generations come, they start paying for our sins, yet they never subscribe to it. I think we need to change our mindset completely. And when I looked at this bill, and I looked at Article 232 on the principle of public service, making sure that it's inclusive, I asked myself, how come no one ever thought about the audit? Because we talk about it. My dear Senator Tabitha, we talk about it. We talk about, oh, let us make sure there is affirmative action. Let us make sure that we cut across and make sure that we, in fact, even in county governments, we have internal audit mechanism. We have the issue of ethnics, balancing. And when you look at every Auditor General report, there's always a concept of, ethnics. You will find that Auditor General will find that there's no ethnic balances. But do we really ever ask ourselves about the audit? The Honorable Rahud in the National Assembly, when he thought about this bill, really operationalize Article 232 of the Constitution of Kenya. This is a bill that I hope, maybe during the Committee of the Whole, we can now add more, because the clause that is being amended reads as follows. In subsection 3, by inserting the following new paragraph immediately after D, details on the human resource establishment within the Service Commission, outlining the total numbers of employees and highlighting their gender, age, ethnicity, and whether they are persons with disability. Mr. Speaker, I want to go further, and I want to beseech the sponsors of this bill to actually demystify it further and detail their relations with the heads of the departments, their relations with the heads of the entities, and you will be shocked. Once we do that, we now think about the consequences, what happens. If it violates the conflict of interest principle, what happens? We cannot just, and that's why I'm thinking, we need to expound further. Yes, we have the audit. You know, a report has been tabled. Can't even say, let's table it here. Then what? I think we need to expound it further and say, prohibits the issue of employing your own relatives in a public service. Employ them in your own private company. Nobody gives a hoot in hell. It is your company. But when it is something that taxpayers are paying for, then you've got no business discriminating other ethnic groups or other individuals. Mr. Speaker, there are ethnic groups now, like my community, the Maasais. And if we don't stand firm and fight for their rights, for employment, Mr. Speaker, in a few years, the Maasais will be forgotten. You know, Narok County is a county which is a Maasai county. But if you go to the county government, you can count how many Maasais are working there. If any institutions come, like now we have the Masai Mara University. The Masai Mara University, just by virtue of it having the name Masai, should be at least 70% local people. The Masais, we are the ones who gave out the land. The other day I was talking to the Vice Chancellor of the university, and we are discussing about trying to write a new memorandum of understanding with the community that I come from that donated land to the university. And I was very happy that she was very welcoming, and she said, look, we definitely would like to do this, because those young men and women who come from that community, who gave out their share of land, did so anticipating that when that university comes, the jobs that comes, they will be given those jobs. You know? But in most cases when you go, you will find that 70% of all the staff, including even sweepers, come from other ethnic groups far from Narok County. This is what we need to check. And the only way to check is by ensuring that every state agency, every county government, and in fact, Mr. Speaker, I want to beseech Senator Cherargei, and if he doesn't, I'll bring the amendment. You know, sometimes when you just leave it like that and you say details of human resource establishment within service commissions, sometimes some people try to become smart. Just like, Mr. Speaker, we are currently, all of us agonizing on Article 110.3 on the definition of consideration. Because the Constitution says before any bill, before a bill is considered by any House of Parliament, you know, the speakers of both houses shall determine whether the bill affects counties or whether it's an ordinary bill or a special bill. But what we forget is on the issue of the term consideration. What does the term consideration mean? When is the bill considered? Is it considered when it has been published? Or is it considered when it has been read the first time? Or is it considered when we are now debating it? So, Mr. Speaker, there are so many things that we need to do. And in fact, that's why I was suggesting that we may need to define in our standing orders, before the clerk reads the bill, he has got to define the term on consideration. Because now, if you look at most of the bills, apart from an amendment bill, it will say this bill either concerns counties or does not concern counties. But even the Supreme Court itself, I know Justice Lanaola came up with 2 decisions. I know the Supreme Court also came up with, a decision in trying to define and understand Article 110.3. I think these 2 houses now can be able to resolve that quagmire by ensuring that we define the term consider. And we can only do so in our standing orders. So to get back to the issue of this bill, I'd be very happy if we define and include and say county governments, state departments, just spell them out so that you do away with the mischief. Once we have done away with the mischiefs, then there will be no reason as to why even these county governments will not be, scared of employing just their family members. But as it is right now, if we do not add consequences, all these 47 men and women will they know they have 5-year contract. They know for the next 5 years it will be their time to eat. You will not see a young Maasai child from a place called Mosiro, which is almost the end of the world, or a young Kipsigis boy from a place called Aganga, being able to rise to become a senator, like the speaker now. So we really have to think about this, and I'm happy that we are here, a few of us, and I do hope that our colleagues will be able to really understand what this amendment means. And we find an opportunity to add more things so that we can be able to promote meritocracy, to give our young men and women an opportunity to become leaders in this country, to give our young men and women an opportunity to be counted, not just to be set aside. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, I'm very passionate about the future generations. And I want to plead to all of us to start building this conversation on future foresights, anticipatory governance. What should we anticipate in terms of policy making, in terms of legislative proposals? One of the reasons why I came back this afternoon to be able to contribute to this piece of legislation is because I saw an element of the bill being future-centric. Because in the past, we employed whoever we employed. You didn't have to account to anybody. There's an issue of accountability. And the day, Mr. Speaker, the day that we all remember that we've got that fiduciary duty, that legal obligation to be our own brothers' keepers, is the day that this country called Kenya will develop. It is the day that all of us will be in a competition of just making the country a much better place for future generations. This bill is quite timely, and I do hope that as we speak to this bill, we will keep in mind the principles defined in Article 232 of the Constitution, because this bill does nothing than save our counties, particularly the county of Narok, from family capture, save the country from, individual captures, those people who are strong-willed and those people who have big, deep pockets and control different departments, and as well as give an opportunity for meritocracy and give us a chance to be able to change the future of this nation for future generations. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Thank you, Senator Ledama. I'll call upon Senator Mutinda Tabitha Maureen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me really start by thanking Senator Cherargei for agreeing to pick up this bill that has been concurred from the National Assembly, which was also brought by Honorable Rahim. I hope I've pronounced his name correctly. And I still want to appreciate also colleagues who have spoken in regards to this bill with an indication of supporting this bill, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me start from where I come from in terms of the name that I hold, that is Mutinda. Because looking at the discussion of this amendment, it is much more in regards to ethnic issues, gender issues, either people with disability or not. All that said, and it just reminded me, Mr. Speaker, the first time I came to Parliament and I said my name, the second thing someone would ask me is, are you the daughter of person, you know, the former Mutinda? Because the notion and the expectation and the way the perception has been for the longest is that for you to be able to be in a certain office or to be able to be at a certain level, then you must be from a specific, you know, loyal, big family. But that was not the case. Mr. Speaker, some of us are very happy and proud to be the products of what we call bottom-up. It is not because of the big names of our families. No, it is because of the belief that the one chicken seller, the son of the Kalenjin people, had a dream and he believed in it. And for years and years, he walked the dream. Today, he's the sitting president of the great republic of this country. And he believed in giving equal opportunity, not looking at who is your father, not looking at who is your mother, not looking at who you are related, but at looking at what you are capable of being able to do. And it is in that that some of us, I personally included, Mr. Speaker, were able to be granted the equal opportunity to represent the great people of Kenya in this Senate, in this 13th Parliament. And like looking at back, where we've even seen leaders, and even currently as we speak, some of these leaders whose children are serving in the different parliaments. Case example, the Yala parliaments, we've seen them taking their own kids. What about the kid who does not come from the wealthy family? Where do they end up? Thank you, Senator Crystal. You know, because I personally am very passionate with the young generation. We kept on hearing years back during Moi's time when he kept on saying that it's for the future generation. But since we are here today, we say it is for the current generation. It is for us all right now, because the future is already here and it is with us. Mr. Speaker, in one of the committees that I sit, actually in both, one of them being finance and budget, and of course the other one being the CPIC, Mr. Speaker. In CPIC, Mr. Speaker, we, on our oversight, we normally oversight the governors. And I've been in the front questioning the governors, Mr. Speaker, when they appear before our committee, And when I look at the composition of their representation on that particular visit, Mr. Speaker, I'm always very keen to observe how many women have accompanied the governor, how many women have been given an opportunity to serve in that county, so that on the matters that we are discussing, they are also present. Mr. Speaker, this is an issue I've pointed out, and I'm happy because some of the governors have really taken it up, and nowadays when they appear before our committee, they have gender balance. Because the question that I always raise is, do they want to indicate to the committee that in that particular county that they've come from, there are no women? When you see governors walking into the committee and they are all male, Mr. Speaker, it is something that we've continued to voice out, and I continue to voice out, because it can't be even in one department they are all male. From that top leadership, be it a CEC, be it a CEO, be it the fund administrator of any fund, that we do not have women. It's something we've noted and something we've raised. So this bill addresses a very key factor, because, Mr. Speaker, you realize when we go to the schools, be it the primary, high level, or universities and colleges, most of the times when recruitments are done in terms of the learning institutions, it's not about where you come from. It's about what you want to attain and what you want to achieve, on what you want to specialize on as a Kenyan student. But remember, these students are being prepared for the Kenyan market. It becomes more fair when there is fairness in equal opportunities for all students in this country. Because when they are coming, when they are going through the learning system in the higher institutions of learning, when I remember, and if my colleagues would agree with me, up to now, I've done my primary level, I did my O-levels, I've done my university level. There is no certificate, Mr. Speaker, today that I hold that indicates my tribe. It just bears my names, what I've been able to specialize on. I think some will have the admission numbers, the unique numbers of that institution, and that is it. It does not even indicate my gender. So if the learning institutions have been able to graduate their students and give them the powers to read and write, but when they come to the job market, they become disadvantaged because of where they come from, because of their ethnic background, then what kind of a generation do we keep on talking about? So I'm happy with this bill because it addresses the bigger issues, because then where do we take these young people? If you have to be of a certain tribe to be able to fit there, we lose it. If you have to be a girl child and you are not, you have to be a boy child and you're a girl child and you miss the opportunity, it becomes a disadvantage, Mr. Speaker. It is the high time that when this bill will be able to be amended, then I want to agree on the reporting issues. We need now to oversight, especially a Senate, on the report of each and every county in terms of the gender, in terms of the ethnicity, in terms of the speciality of any individual employed in any government institution. It is important, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, with the data that I've been able to look through, you find that only 13 out of 47 counties have adhered to the County Government Act 2012 that says the composition should be 70-30. 70 giving an opportunity to the local people, and 30 to the other people. That means the other people coming from the different ethnic groups, different cultures, different clans, for them to have also an equal opportunity in that particular county. And only 13. I look at Nairobi. Mr. Speaker, you realize that Nairobi, we are a cosmopolitan county. Our population is very high. The county government of Nairobi has over 13,000 employees. And out of that, you realize we have numbers like 15% of the Kikuyus, we have 15 for Kalenjins, we have 11% for Luyas, 9% for Luos. Yes, these are, some of them, like the Kikuyus, are majority, but you find that some of the communities, like even where I come from the Kamba community, you realize the
Senator
number.
Mandago, what is your point of order? Kindly resume your seat, Senator.
Yes, the honourable member, honourable Speaker, has cited percentages of particular communities. I would like to know whether that is authentic data that she can produce evidence. As far as I'm concerned, honourable Speaker, we are not 15% in Nairobi. In fact, we are among the marginalized in Nairobi.
Senator Mutinda, you were able to table the statistics on the percentages that you've made reference to in your comments to the bill.
I appreciate the keenness of Governor Senator. It's good. I'm happy that he's keen. And I want to state that Senator Mandago, the data that I've used, I've just gotten it. If you'll just go to the site, you'll just be able to get it from there. I can be able to share it with you if you allow. Just after this, I can just be able to share it with you. I've just gotten it from simply from the site. I speak about my county because it's the county that I represent.
To share those specifics to Senator Mandago's satisfaction. But
Yeah.
proceed with your contributions, Minda.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the keen listening of Senator Mandago. Thank you, Senator Mandago. Mr. Speaker, allow me to still proceed and say that that is the data that is in place. Yes, Nairobi is a cosmopolitan, but still, it should allow that all groups, all types of ethnic groups, also have an equal opportunity within the same county, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you realize that our language, our basic language is Swahili and English. But you realize in some of these counties, it is sad because the language that is there is just pure vernacular, then that then does not promote what we uphold as a country. And remember, each and every county we have the Department of Tourism, culture, yes, but still we should uphold our Swahili and English to the highest level, Mr. Speaker. Article 232, Mr. Speaker, is very clear in regards to the standards of professional ethics, efficient, effective, and economic use of resources. When we have the competent people, when people are in offices by merit, Mr. Speaker, then it is, with that specialization of professionalism levels, it gives quality output, quality service delivery, Mr. Speaker. But you realize that because of the clanism, you find that a county has, or an institution has, you know, it's like an extended family of relatives. Then how do you even expect there be deliverables within that county? It becomes a challenge. The other day, I think a few weeks ago, I saw that there was a report on fake documents by the employees in the different government institutions. And when you look at this further, there must have been a hand that supported that. And I'm happy today the government requires, if you're going to be a government employee, NEC has to certify your results. They have to send those results to that particular institution. And this then will reduce this rogueness. Mr. Speaker, we've had even cases whereby governors, for case example, have fake certificates. And these are the leaders that are expected to be managers and be able to deliver. And that is why we are having, in my Committee of Finance, I'm having a lot of statements on the issues of pending bills. Pending bills, because you realize there has to be that competence of knowing that this is the money, this is the equitable share that you've been able to receive as a county. You have the grants, you have equalization fund, you know, we have more additional funds. But you find that there is misuse. And some of this is brought about by lack of competence, lack of the knowledge and skill that is required for you to be able to plan accordingly and plan well. Further to that, Mr. Speaker, it is brought about by the fact that you employ, you extend your family, and you expect results. I like it when Dr. William Ruto, the president of this country, Mr. Speaker, will be very much on his executive, on the ministers, when he says, I should not know more than your ministry. Then it means you're sleeping. The next thing is exit, because it needs competency on the highest level. Let me finish up, Mr. Speaker. I didn't want to go to it, but it just came to my mind. On the issue that has happened in Kisii County, which is already in all our social medias, in regards to an impeachment that has taken place, which the communication that is coming about is about an employment that was to take place. Same issues that we're discussing, Mr. Speaker, employment issues. It should be done within merit. It should be done within the County Act 2012, the 70-30. There should be fairness. There is no way, Mr. Speaker. Remember right now, Mr. Speaker, we have intermarriages. And we are trying such that our kids nowadays, they need to feel like Kenyans. They don't need to feel like they belong really to a certain ethnic. But the moment we continue filling these spaces with only our own families, our own people, then we lose it. Because what about that kid? As I started, I said, Mr. Speaker, was it not the kind of president we have, Dr. William, with his bottom-up strategy, that he gave equal opportunities during this leadership and this formation of this government, then some of us would not have been here. Because I'm not here because of my father was a Mutinda, a big man somewhere. Actually, I'm a daughter of a single mother, and I'm very proud of it. It is out of our hard work, out of the education that we've sacrificed ourselves to be able to put ourselves into. And so for us to be able to see results and open doors for others, this amendment needs to be done. And I want to urge colleagues, this is one of the bills, amendment. Let us support it 100%. It does not only take care of you, but takes care of your children's to be. Because then if this is not done, we continue singing the same song, it becomes difficult. The fakeness of documents, that needs to stop, and I support the government in ensuring, Mr. Speaker, that they verify the documents. With all those many and few remarks, I support and congratulate Senator Cherargei for picking up this particular bill, and we hope and still appreciate that National Assembly, these are some of the bills that they appreciate, that also as Senate, we need to adapt this bill. This is the way to work. This is the way to go. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Crystal Asiga.
Thank you, Speaker, for allowing me to contribute to the Public Service and Principles Amendment Bill of 2022. Mr. Speaker, the proposed changes hold personal significance for me. With the Constitution of Kenya having been in operation for over 13 years, it's no longer accurate to refer to it as new. The Constitution sets forth obligations for public organs and entities, including the equal opportunities for training, employment, and advancement of persons with disabilities at all levels of the public service, that is, Speaker, as outlined in Article 232 of the Constitution. Currently, Speaker, the representation of PWDs in the public service stands at 1.4% only, falling short of the requirement stipulated in Article 54(2) of the Constitution, which is 5%. Despite the Constitution's call for progressive implementation, over a decade has passed since its promulgation without clear benchmarks for what constitutes as progressive action. Without establishing clear parameters for this progress, Speaker, we risk perpetuating the same inadequate representation for another decade or even more. It's crucial that reports detail the number of PWDs employed by each service commission annually, along with any increases over time. This transparency is essential for ensuring accountability, Speaker, and preventing the ongoing neglect of PWDs in the public service. Further, Speaker, these reports should provide insights into the measures taken by service commissions to actively recruit, to train, and to promote PWDs within the public sector. By tracking these efforts, Speaker, over time, we can assess the effectiveness of the strategies aimed at inclusion of PWDs in the workforce. Additionally, Speaker, the reports should highlight any challenges encountered in implementing policies, they should highlight any challenges encountered in implementing policies aimed at promoting the participation of PWDs in the public service. Identifying barriers and obstacles is crucial, Speaker, for devising solutions and ensuring meaningful progress in this area of trying to reach the 5% principle of employment of persons with disabilities in our public service. Mr. Speaker, there is a really strong case for the employment of persons with disabilities. Several reports, world over, that is, show that hiring persons with disabilities is not just the right thing to do, but it's the smart thing to do for progressing any institution and any environment that PWDs find themselves in. Mr. Speaker, reports show that when you hire a person with disability, you increase productivity, you increase innovation, you increase loyalty, because people with disabilities, with our very few chances at employment, we stick close to the people that give us opportunities, and we are loyal to those organizations. Also, reports show when you hire a person with disability, you increase empathy within the workforce. You increase belonging and understanding of diversity and the importance of it because of these people with disabilities just being and sharing the same space with other non-disabled counterparts in the workforce. Mr. Speaker, right now in Kenya, stats also show that out of the approximately 18 million people in our workforce in the formal sector, out of 18 million of those who have jobs today in the formal sector, only approximately 500,000 are persons with disabilities. That is less than 3% of our workforce right now. Those who have jobs are people with disabilities, and that is abysmal, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I said before, the PSC only accounts for the workforce in the PSC only accounts for 1.4% persons with disability employment. And through this bill, I wish to see this number increase rapidly, Mr. Speaker, because we have been waiting, and we've been waiting for far too long to be represented fully within the Public Service Commission and other boards, Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we also need to and I hope that the mover of the co-sponsor of this bill, Senator Cherargei, will listen keenly to what I'm about to suggest. Mr. Speaker, there is something in the disabled community which is a real challenge to us. First of all, the public must understand that within the disabled community, there is diversity therein. People with disabilities are not homogeneous, Mr. Speaker. We are diverse within our disabilities. That means that when we are hiring and giving opportunities for participation and inclusion of PWDs, we need to make sure that we are diverse in the types of disabilities we are catering towards. What does that mean, Speaker? That means we are supposed to find out in this reporting that is suggested in the proposed amendments, we should find out clearly how many people are visually impaired or blind, how many are employed that are deaf, how many are employed that are wheelchair users, that are autistic, that have Down syndrome, that have cerebral palsy, that have multiple sclerosis, that are quadriplegic, so on and so forth, Mr. Speaker. We should not just rest, Speaker, at saying, oh, we have hired 10 people with albinism, and therefore we are working and we are in line with the Constitution. No. We need to go further and make sure that the people that we are hiring with disabilities are also diverse by the nature of their disability, so that we are giving the different sectors within the disabled community a chance at employment and a chance to be represented at all levels, Speaker. It's not enough to just say we have 1 or 2 disabilities represented and that's okay, we're fine now. We have adhered to what this particular bill asks us to do. Mr. Speaker, we need to go further than that. So I would suggest to Cherargei, Senator for Nandi County, to make sure that the words diverse disabilities are also included in this amendment. Not just persons with disabilities, but persons with diverse disabilities, so that we make sure that all sectors of our community, the disabled community that is, and the fraternity at large, are also being given a chance at employment and at representation in our country. Mr. Speaker, it's a well-known fact that many, even in public and in the private sector, do hire those with easier, and I put this in quotes, I want to be very careful and sensitive, but this is an ongoing argument within the community, with easier to handle disabilities, Mr. Speaker, because it is thought that when you hire, for example, a blind person like myself, that means that you'll have to hire an aide for me to work properly. That means that you'll have to get assistive equipment, including computers and IT software, which has a cost. It means that you'll have to get a special trainer to come in and assist someone like me to understand and work these technologies and these devices. And so the cost of hiring a visually impaired person is seen as too high. And therefore, what do people do to circumvent? They hire somebody with a more palatable, in quotes, disability. And that, Mr. Speaker, is completely out of order, and it's wrong. It's the reason, perhaps, why I am the first and only senator with a visual impairment, Mr. Speaker. Of all the years that Senate has been running, this House has been running, I am the first and only senator with a visual impairment, and that should not be the case. I should not be the first and only. There should have been many more before me, and there should be many more after me, because I hope that my existence, my sheer being in this space will show people that actually people with visual impairment and people who are blind are just as productive, if not more, than a whole range of people who have come through these doors, Speaker. So that is one amendment that I also wish for Cherargei to take forward as he continues to move this bill and get support from colleague senators. Mr. Speaker, we absolutely have to also look into not just the employment of people with disabilities, but the training and the retention of people with disabilities. I spoke to this personally with the chair of the PSC just a week ago when he appeared in front of our committee, which is the Labour Committee, Speaker. And I explained to him and his team that it's not enough just to advertise for and then recruit a person with disability, but what are you doing to train them so they can continue to upskill? What are you doing to make sure that you retain them, not just employ them for 6 months and say, oh, we've ticked a box, we have reached our quota, or we are progressively actioning the 5% principle of employment and representation as per the Constitution, but actually saying, how can we retain these people with disabilities? What do we need to do? How do we go above and beyond what is required of us in paper so that we can have these people with disabilities stay with us for 2 years, for 5 years, for 10, even until retirement? Because, like I said, there is a huge case for hiring persons with disabilities. Mr. Speaker, this isn't just in the public service nationally, but also we need to look at the same in county governments. I've said here many times before, and I will not tire to say, that there are 21 counties currently that have no PWD representation, none at all. And this House and the lower house, the National Assembly, are doing nothing about it right now. It seems to be only me that is talking about it. But if we had full representation, we would have more voices amplifying this egregious misrepresentation of people with disabilities. Mr. Speaker, I want to really laud the mover of the bill in his efforts, as well as his co-sponsor from the National Assembly, in putting these issues forward regarding values and principles, and make sure that the sponsors do understand the importance of what I'm saying. It's not just semantics, Speaker. It's not just adding a word here or removing a word there, because language and how it is interpreted is extremely important, and that is how people in this country have been able to go around this particular 5% principle requirement, because our laws and the language that we use in our laws is not specific and does not pin people down, and there are no consequences for a lack of adherence to the Constitution. I also want to concur with other colleague senators who have said that there must be consequences for non-compliance. With everything that we're doing, there has to be absolutely consequences. What are the consequences of not reaching 5% principle in this country? There are none right now. And that's why people have been able to continue masquerading and leaving people with disabilities behind since 2010, since before 2010. And I'm afraid and I'm very concerned that it will continue until even after my lifetime, Mr. Speaker. Without punitive action, without some sort of a consequence for non-compliance within national and county governments, we will never, ever see the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, really being fulfilled and coming to true fruition when it comes to respect of persons with disabilities in this country. Mr. Speaker, I hope with those many remarks that the mover has noted this down, because I am fighting tooth and nail, day and night, to have these issues listened to and taken seriously in all our laws, so that we can be a house that continues to be disability responsive within our legislation. Every single piece of legislation that comes through this House has to have a disability lens put to it. Absolutely has to have. And I'm happy that some senators before me have actually mentioned, for the first time in a long time, I'm not the only person talking about disability in this House. It's refreshing. So I thank those who have pointed out matters of disabilities, and I hope that Senator Cherargei, through you, Chair, will take these amendments and proposals that I've put forth in this contribution into action. I thank you.
Tobiko Peris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I was really panicking about the time, and I'm still not sure how many minutes that I have. But Mr. Speaker, let me just say I support this bill and congratulate Senator Cherargei and the co-sponsor of the bill, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if only this law, once enacted, will be able to, cure the circus that is in our service commissions, both in the Public Service Commission and in at the county levels, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this country has been, put in a situation whereby nothing seems to matter. It is, the strongest takes it all, or the survival of the fittest, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if only we can rectify our public service so that merit is...
Honorable Senators,
you tried.
May rise. It's now 6:30 p.m. Time to adjourn the Senate. The Senate therefore stands adjourned until Tuesday, 5th of March 2024 at 2:30 p.m. when we resume. Senator Tobiko will have a balance of 18 minutes to contribute to this amendment to the bill.